Americans are having a record low amount of sex, even less than they did during COVID. Just 37% of American adults have sex weekly, down from 55% in 1990. Does this counter the view that sex is becoming more casually accepted than ever before?
Who goes first?
Do you want to go first? I think I glanced at these statistics and what I thought was interesting and sort of haven't really had a chance to burrow into is how does it split between the long-term partnered and the casually and the unpartnered?
Yeah,
because that's been generally that's where the commentary gets interesting, and people have often the conservative side will say no, actually the not getting any is very much the people who are not married, and actually the married are getting any. And if I remember rightly, the recent headlines were no, actually the people who are married are also becoming more panda-like.
Sex recessions happening across the board.
Yeah, it's happening across the board.
Relationship agnostic.
So I think that the paradox where people are simultaneously having less sex and apparently being at least more permissive towards casual sex, whether or not they're having lots of it, I think is solved by that marriage issue. So if people are less likely to be in long-term partnerships and people in long-term partnerships have more sex. So I think there's a model that works where, say, Gen Z are having casual sex, but they're only having casual sex. So like one hookup a year, for instance, works out as very little sex. But it's also not to say that casual sex culture doesn't exist.
So you're able to have both of these things.
I think that those things work.
And they might actually be causing each other.
Yeah. But I also think it's plausible that even married people might be having less sex. And that might be to do with things like obesity, things like, I don't know, xenoestrogens. Like there could be biological things going on. Or people just looking at their phones too much.
I think people looking at their phones is at least as plausible at a practical level as xenoestrogens or any of the sort of exotic biological explanations. I mean, it's very absorbing, and at the end of the day, a certain amount of action happens. Just nothing to do, nothing on TV,
spontaneously. Out of boredom.
You're here, I'm here.
Alice Evans, who's a academic at KCL London, she blames smartphones for the birth rate crisis.
I mean, the line starts going down.
They certainly track,
sometime before smartphones.
Well, it depends.
It really
on what
goes off a cliff in the
60s,
doesn't it?
It depends on which country you're looking at. But she notices, and I think this is true, that all the parts of the world that have seen and are seeing the greatest drops in fertility, this does track with smartphone usage. And the places where fertility is clinging on in, say, sub-Saharan Africa is where people are least likely to have smartphones. I think probably the third factor that those things correlate with is actually modernity and affluence. And that's more complex. But it's interesting. I mean, her theory is that people are just so besotted with the joys of limbic capitalism delivered via their phones that they just forget to behave like normal human beings and reproduce.
Do you think Taylor Swift's tradwife arc will be enough to reverse birth rate decline?
But she's not having a tradwife arc, is she?
She's engaged. Come on, let her do it one step at a time. Come on. Bloody hell.
What is she, 35?
Yeah, maybe,
yeah. It's not especially tradwife, is it?
You know what I mean, though? Yeah. There was a poem by someone called Kaylin Weird. It's got tens of millions of views. Have you seen this? It's been floating around. The day Taylor Swift got engaged, little girls screamed, grown women cried, and the awkward child we all carry inside finally felt chosen. My point, lots of women follow Taylor Swift. She's got engaged. Is this going to be a boon? It's a non-zero impact on coupling, right? But how big is it going to be?
So these things are mimetic. I'm with you there. But I don't know. I mean, that is an interesting question. Like, we know that with fertility, if your sister, say, has a baby, you're more likely to have a baby in the year following, and best friend, etc.
But does it work when it's Taylor Swift?
Well, maybe. I mean, I was thinking maybe parasocial relationships can have the same effect. And probably actually people spend more. I mean, it occurred to me the other day that I see Donald Trump's face so much more often than I see like my neighbours' faces, for instance. And that's probably true for you as well.
Because your neighbours are wearing Donald Trump masks as they walk.
To wind me up, yeah. But the parasocial relationships, I mean, everyone who's any kind of digital device is susceptible to them. So yeah, maybe Taylor might be able to trick her biggest fans into thinking my sister's just had a baby, or when she does eventually have a baby, hopefully. So yeah, I think it's not negligible. But
birth rate decline might be a slightly bigger challenge than can be fixed by Taylor Swift.
Maybe a little bit.
I mean, you could also make the case, I'm going to be provocative here, that birth rate decline is not so much a problem as just nature taking its course. In the sense of a culture self-correcting from a kind of a terminal spiral into a kind of a structural state of sterility. I mean, if the logical endpoint of limbic capitalism, this superb phrase that Louise just raised, I don't know if you've come across this phrase before. It was coined by a writer called David Courtwright, who wrote a book titled Limbic Capitalism, which is a critique of all the ways that, especially in more recent years, the way people make money, the most profitable source of new innovation is hacking people's basic primitive drives and redirecting them from what they're actually healthily meant to do towards making money for companies. So selling junk food, selling pornography, hacking people's dopamine systems so that they stay hypnotized by social media instead of getting it on, or forming relationships, or even frankly going outside. All of those things are instances of what Courtwright calls limbic capitalism. And I think you could make the case that if the direction of the general overall cultural direction of travel is such that that's the end point that we're currently destined towards, if it's resulting in people just not having babies, you could argue that if you take a step back, that's just evolution taking its course. We are being selected against by our own commercial infrastructure.
That's interesting.
And the end point of that will be that the current culture will very literally not be reproduced, and will be replaced in 2 or 3 generations by some other culture which has somehow managed to unplug from the Skinner machine.
Yeah. Okay.
So in the long term, it's kind of optimistic, but in the short term, for the people who are committed to the limbic capitalist architecture, it looks like a disaster.
The conversation I had with Brad Wilcox, he was talking about why South Korea has got such a low birth rate, and one of his big theories is around K-pop stars. Have you heard this one?
No.
Fucking brilliant. So, the K-pop revolution is very constructed. These people sort of apply, they go through Navy SEAL selection week, and then they're done, and they're locked into these ironclad 360 24/7 contracts, and in them they can't date. They're to be completely celibate for the entire time, which means that
how long does it last, the contract?
Well, for as long as they're in the band. And if they want to go and if they were to begin dating, they would be out, right? Maybe, I don't know.
What's the reasoning?
I think he didn't say that, but I'm going to guess something like, we want you completely committed to this huge project, and anything which is off that might muddy the water. There's
also a cleaner parasocial relationship, isn't it, as well?
I suppose.
When you think about the relationship between Taylor Swift's fans, Taylor Swift's boyfriends, and Taylor Swift. What was it, Matty Healy? And when she was dating him, they all went. Her entire fan base of bajillions of women went absolutely bananas. They hated him, and her fan base basically split up the relationship.
That's a way to put it. That if you have a personal relationship, there is a part of you that is outside of the band.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is no personal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And his point is that because you have the most popular, most aspirational role models within a country are all uncoupled and childless, that created a huge generational impact of you shouldn't be trying to have kids. And if that's true, there was a great example. I think it's the country of Georgia, very religious, and they have this like superstar rock star pastor, and he's the most popular guy in the entire country. And he tried to fix birth rate decline by saying, I will personally baptize the 3rd child of any family.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And these
people had lots of kids.
Families are speed running through children in a desperate attempt to get the 3rd. And so you can see people who are of high status are able to create incentives that encourage people who respect them in order to follow them. So the obvious thing, at least for Korea, that you could fix overnight is the only way you can become a K-pop star is if you're already a mother or father. Like that's how you get in. And that means that every K-pop star now is a example.
But again, the entire architecture of limbic capitalism militates against that, because the excitement, clearly, I mean, this is not a world I'm massively familiar with, but there's obviously like huge volumes of gossip content and huge amount of exposure, and like the every aspect of these people's lives, down to their inner lives, is made available for strip mining by the media machine. Right? And under those circumstances, it's just not possible to be a parent, because to be there, to be for your child or to be for your family is to keep some of that material, some of that intimate stuff protected from being strip mined and commercialized in that way. I mean, this is something you and I talk about, isn't it, Louise? Like how and in what, how one can go about existing in public while intentionally preserving a space of intimacy where family life happens, and which is not subject to
the digital modesty thing.
Yeah, digital modesty, exactly. And I mean, I'm very intentional about what I post and when and how I share any information at all about my family. They're there and I love them. And if I don't talk about them, it's not because actually I secretly wish I wasn't part of that family. It's precisely because I respect their privacy, and their stories are not mine to tell. But to be a K-pop star to say you have to be a parent to be a K-pop star would be to say you also have to be willing to strip mine your family.
That's true. I suppose you're strip mining your ability to have a family in the first iteration of it, though, right? Like you're refusing to have. Okay, so on one side you are being puppeted by lack, and on the other side you are being puppeted by transparency.
I mean, I think at the risk of getting very anti-capitalist very early in this conversation, perhaps the problem is the strip mining.
I mean, the position that we're all in is,
in the literal, physical, natural world, as well as in the emotional.
Good caveat. But my point is, we're all kind of under the impression or the awareness that is a problem that's too big to be solved. So you need interventions that can. This is the world that we exist within. That's so compelling to people and so seductive that you're not going to be able to stop that. You're not going to get people off smartphones. You're not going to stop social media from hacking the bottom of the brainstem. Okay, so what are the ways? Get Taylor Swift engaged. I don't know.
I think if there's any... So I think it's not the case that South Korea has low fertility because of K-pop, but it probably... If there was one easy intervention that you could at least attempt, it would be in the world of propaganda, right, for the birth rates thing. So whether that be intentionally boosting mothers and fathers, or obliging K-pop stars to shag in an appropriate way, or like whatever the rules are, maybe that would work for trying to make parenthood higher status. The problem with any other type of birth rate intervention is that all of the other options are fairly appalling, I think, in terms of like our actual ability to tolerate them, because the cash transfers don't work, is what we've learned. And so if the cash transfers don't work, we could try propaganda. After that, we're just going to have to go. Evolution takes its course.
Stop the Wi-Fi networks and kill data access from your phone.
We could try that, I suppose. Yeah.
I just found the Taylor Swift thing's been, like, in the reaction to that and then the subsequent re-reaction has been pretty interesting.
Well, you try and design a clever study to see if she boosts marriage and birth rates. And we'll see.
Correlate your marriage rate with your Spotify listening habits.
Yeah, that's true.
Save Taylor Swift.
Apparently, a supermarket loyalty programs can already tell when somebody's pregnant, even before they realize it themselves.
My algorithm did that
just by their search patterns and purchase patterns.
I got an ad for pregnancy tests before I knew I was pregnant. The most recent time.
Amazing.
Yeah, the internet's very clever.
It's uncanny.
There's an app called Aura, A-U-R-A, and it's digital safety stuff. You put it on everybody's phone, but you can put it on your kid's phone, and it allows parents to have sort of surveillance that's safe without encroaching too much on privacy. At least that's the positioning. But it does things like it looks at how hard they're pressing the screen, and it correlates that with their level of sort of psychological distress. And it looks at the last time that they used it and the first time they used it in the morning. And then they correlate that with GPS data. It's all held securely, supposedly. Right. And it's like, it can deliver a report to a parent that says, when little Timmy goes to baseball, he sleeps for 45 minutes longer on average, and he's this % less aggressive when he's pressing the screen, which suggests that it's very regulating for him.
His grandmother could have told you that, though.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff is a lot of this stuff is absolutely it's a substitute for attentive, attuned interpersonal relationships from people who love you.
Mm-hmm. We're trying to re-engineer through,
right. And there's a sense in which the more you offer a tech alternative to that, the more you create, the more you open the possibility that actually you can just do without the relationship. Yeah. Whereas. And it's jumping slightly sideways from that to the power of older women for pattern recognition. I was talking to a local friend who has a son the same age as my daughter. We were talking about schools as we were walking our dogs. Very, 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 very normie, very, very, very normie, very countryside, very. And he was telling me his wife, who's also my friend's mother, runs a local riding school. It's one of those very classic kind of, English kind of tier 3 riding schools where all the school ponies are very hairy and very muddy, and generation after generation after generation of local girls, sort of from tween probably to mid-teens, have come through this riding stables. So my friend's mother-in-law has observed patterns of behaviour in possibly, I think 25 years worth of local girls, and he and his wife are basing their school selection on what she has observed over 25 years about the change in disposition as those girls go off to different schools. So not Ofsted, not even what other parents think, not even what other parents are planning to do, but which secondary schools instantly overnight transformed the girls that my mother-in-law saw from nice little girls into brats, and which didn't.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
And that's the kind of stuff which you can try and replace with an app, but you can't, basically.
A quick aside, you've probably heard experts like Dr. Rhonda Patrick talk about the benefits of omega-3s. They support brain reduction. They support brain function, but they reduce inflammation. They improve heart health and are backed by hundreds of studies. It's really tough to get enough through diet. No one's eating that much salmon. Come on. And with Momentous, you're getting the highest quality omega-3s on the market. They're NSF certified for sport, and they're tested for heavy metals and purity. Huge deal if you're getting anything that is seafood supplement related, which is why Momentous is unparalleled when it comes to rigorous third-party testing. What you read on the label is what's in the product and absolutely nothing else. Best of all, they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it, try it. There's 60 capsules. You take 2 per day. You can take this entire bottle, and if you don't love it, they'll just give you your money back. So it's risk-free. And they ship internationally. Right now, you can get 35% off your first subscription and that 30-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to livemomentous.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's livemomentous.com/modernwisdom and modern wisdom at checkout.
If you ever read that classic blog, I think it's by an anonymous blogger from years ago, about WAMs versus autists. so WAMs is a made-up term. So the argument in the piece is great. Is we spend a lot of time talking about autism and like identifying it in people and seeing it as an obviously bad thing, and we'll list all the ways in which autistic people suffer in the world, and we see it as something to be treated. I mean, obviously in extreme nonverbal forms, obviously that's appropriate, but to some extent it is just a personality type, and it's a personality type you're more likely to see in men and is often pathologized. And the piece argues that, no, look, like autism is just one end of a spectrum in terms of a disposition, in terms of being more interested in things than people and being very interested in systems and being quite socially withdrawn and whatever. We don't have a term for the other end of the spectrum. We just don't talk about the other end of the spectrum. But there is such a thing as someone being more interested in people than things, not really being interested in systems, being very extroverted and being very intuitive about everything and very like hypersensitive to emotion or whatever. Why don't we have a name for that? Because in extreme forms, that's also a problem. And so the writer, who I think is Mel, calls them WAMs.
Which stands for?
Nothing. It stands for nothing. It's just a word that he made up. So whammishness is like the opposite of being autistic. And that's a fantastic example of whammishness, just pure like intuiting from the girl's emotional states.
I don't know. I mean, it seems like a robust example of pattern recognition and the most of grounded and localistic kind.
But I mean, it's whammishness because it's people focused.
I mean, I know this guy's mother-in-law. I've met her on a number of occasions. She's the least kind of emotionally labile individual you can imagine.
Okay.
She's like small, square, thick-set, extremely practical English horsewoman. You're
relying very heavily on your neighbours not watching this.
Sorry?
You're relying very heavily on your neighbours not watching.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to name names, and these are all people whom I love and respect. I cite this as examples of what a functioning social fabric looks like.
Yeah,
absent.
This is classic British village life.
Yeah.
And
the reason I talk about affectionately and respectfully, really deeply affectionately and respectfully about my neighbours and my local community in this way is because living like this is what you have before you start trying to reverse engineer a technological replacement for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are not people who are all up in each other's grills the whole time. Small town England is mostly people mind their own business.
Yeah.
But there's a sense in which you're known cumulatively over time just because you all show up in the same places and you go to the same playgroups and whatever. And that's a very different way of being known and seen and observed than, for example, creating a profile online or even, having your data tracked and monetized by a supermarket shopping app or an algorithm that wants to sell you pregnancy tests.
This
very different.
It's certainly a missing archetype, I think, for the wise non-grandmother influence in some young person's life. I think we call those the aunties, really. That's why the group chat that I made between us is aunties.
Yes.
That was not as flippant as you might have thought.
All right.
And like those auntie influences. I don't live in the town or the country that I was born in. I've been displaced by my own choice, but most of my communication now is mediated through all of that. Where is the opportunity for some older matriarch woman to,
Why aren't you married yet, Chris?
bestow me the wisdom? I'm aware that's a big question. I'm aware that.
Well, I mean, I'm not expecting you to answer it now, but this is what all of the aunties will beast you with on every possible occasion.
I did highlight that I actually dread now going to weddings because as a 37-year-old unmarried man, every time that the vows are completed, the fucking eyes of Sauron all turn to the people who... Christopher, when are we? Oh, for fuck's sake! I feel like I need to, do some fugazi. Are those hors d'oeuvres over there? I must, escape the situation.
But that's what aunties are for.
But that's what aunties do.
Yeah.
So
Poking.
I mean, your relation.
A lot of poking.
I mean, you're
absolutely.
On the one hand, you long for the aunties and you want to create auntie groups. On the other hand, you want to run away from them when they beast you at weddings.
That's true. I think this is the auntie dynamic.
Yeah.
You I mean, probably was ever thus.
Yeah, correct. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about a kind of downstream from the Taylor Swift thing. I want to talk about pick-me's and performative males because these are two memes that are taking off a little bit at the moment.
Performative males? This is not one I've heard. Please say
Have you heard
more.
about performative males?
No.
What is a performative male?
You need to get back on Twitter. You need to get back on Twitter.
I am cut out of discourse.
Um,
If Mary doesn't send me a tweet, I just don't see it.
Okay.
I've also been deliberately not very online all through the summer. I took my holiday from the internet in England's last remaining phone black spot.
I've decided to pick your fucking sabbatical from online life.
We've just reached the end
And
of Lent.
today is the day that the kids go back to school. So had I have asked you this in 4 weeks' time, it'd be, allow me to tell you about performative males. Okay,
So you're going to have to fill us in.
let me do that. Okay, so performative males are... It's a call out. It's been very interesting. The trend emerged and almost immediately became kind of castigated. Like woke had an opportunity to be a legitimate term before it was a satirical term. Performative males have almost immediately become satirized. Performative male is a guy with floppy hair, sort of oversized flared jeans. He's got a tote bag. He's reading some sort of literary fiction. He's got a matcha. He's not quite like a cinnamon roll boyfriend, husband thing.
Is this not just the new soy boy?
Maybe it might be kind of like an elevated hipster, like a soft boy archetype, perhaps from sort of the late 2010s. It might be the equivalent of women wearing like football shirts or Pink Floyd t-shirts, or like kind of like the male. Imagine the male equivalent of a pick-me, but it's stripped of most of the raw, aggressive, kind of more masculine, more domineering.
So let me, if I were to speculate, I would say this is the kind of guy who might employ the sneaky fucker mating strategy.
So this is why it's become, I think, immediately satirized. I think it's
Louise,
like,
of course, knows what I mean.
Of course I do, yes.
It's poorly hidden, pliable male mating tactics being called out very quickly.
Actually, interestingly, I'm not sure how well this maps to performative males, but I remember discovering very interestedly discovering just how high the proportion is of male feminists who subsequently end up being MeToo'd as sex pests.
I remember you writing this piece.
Yeah. I think the lawyers took
high.
4 paragraphs.
Yes.
Because they weren't sufficiently well, because they were just rumours, and it was just I think
allegedly, we must remember that
article.
allegedly,
They gutted the article, but really the pattern is strong enough that even if you don't name names, it's a thing. So these guys they're sort of droopy and feminized in presentation.
Flaccid man.
At least in presentation.
But heterosexual.
But heterosexual.
Yeah. And the performative males being this, I think it's...
Is it the one guy who comes to Pilates with you and then just like tries to hit on you?
We're getting close there. We're getting perilously close to like what would have been the sneaky fucker male feminist. The performative male, I think it's as much an aesthetic as anything else.
Okay.
So it might be the aesthetic. Basically, it might just be a rework of the aesthetic of the sneaky fucker.
What does he read?
I'm not too sure what he would be reading. Yasmin. She left. She's my source of sneaky fucker info because she's in LA. But it would be him sort of matcha in hand. He's the male embodiment of a matcha drink.
So
does he read Sarah J. Maas? I think this is what I'm trying to figure out.
What it reminds me of is the 70s when you had the men simultaneously embracing long hair and free love and whatever, and being quite feminine and dodging the draft and stuff. So on the one hand, being anti-masculine, but then fully embracing the post-sexual revolution opportunity to get women into bed. And feminists at the time complained about this. What it sounds like, though, is that the performative male adds a layer of like consumerism, which is quite distinctively 2025. Is that right?
I think you nailed it. Yeah, with the tote bag, with the dress, with the hair.
Yeah.
I mean,
a Labubu on his bag.
Almost certainly Labubu. Actually, that's a better way to put it. If you could find a Labubu
males.
with a matcha, it's Labubu males. Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I said one of the sort of depressing thoughts that crossed my mind the other day. You know, when you think about these sort of like this sort of noodle-armed male phenotype, you know, with a Labubu on his bag and a matcha in his hand, and maybe he actually literally does read Sarah J. Maas. And I think about them, and you think about, you know, do I need to wait a moment?
It's okay. The way that you construct sentences, I can't keep a straight face. It's fucking brilliant. Okay, go on.
But I mean, you know, these kind of these stop it.
Sorry. I'm sorry. So okay. Yeah, Labubu man.
Yeah. So Labubu guys. What if, in fact, they're more evolutionarily fit in the context of what the working
they're fucking
environment.
adapted to the new environment.
That's what I mean. Because it's like when you think about the kind of work that everyone actually does now, and when you think about the kind of social environments that particularly knowledge class people of either sex have to operate within, actually being the kind of high tea, aggressive,
you're not sitting still in class.
Not sitting, you know, those guys get medicalized and pathologized basically because they don't work in open plan offices.
Question on this. Is this as close as a man can get to being female whilst still being reproductively viable for females to find attractive?
Yeah, but
and given
possible.
that females have got this advantage socioeconomically in the education and in the workplace, this is like the new, it's, and also I want to talk about Me Too at some point today. I wonder if this is the sort of post-Me Too acceptable, what men think, even though incorrectly, I've been told, do not be domineering, do not be too forthcoming, do not be somebody that could make women feel threatened in any way. What's the least threatening Labubu, tote bag, floppy hair, matcha drink?
It's very HR friendly.
Yeah, and I do get the impression like there's a lot of guys, particularly those who are sort of, you know, socialized into a more sort of progressive kind of thought world, who genuinely feel very distressed by the sort of high tea, aggressive male disposition. I just finished reading a book. I mean, it's a good book, very interesting piece of work by an ecological economist on care and the sort of Cinderella economy, as he puts it, of care and maintenance and systemic health and environmental sustainability and so on, which he sees as being again strip mined, exploited, and ultimately exhausted by the quote unquote real economy that we now have. And in it, he has a whole chapter about the patriarchy, which I just found a really interesting read from a guy who's, he's a successful guy, and he's got adult children, and he's obviously sporty and fit and intelligent, well read, and so on. So perfectly manly man within the terms of modern respectable liberal society, but he's furious about the patriarchy, and the passage I found most interesting is he has a little discussion about Daphne du Maurier's novels, and Jamaica Inn particularly, and Rebecca, and he talks his reading of Daphne du Maurier is as a feminist, that it's a critique of gender relations between the sexes, and particularly of the chronic kind of vulnerability of women to male violence. But at one point he observes that du Maurier's female characters are both vulnerable to male violence and also kind of turned on by it. He doesn't quite put it like that, but there's obviously a real ambivalence in the way she writes, and he doesn't know how to process it. And I find that really interesting, just in the context of thinking about how the Labubu Man presents. I'm not suggesting that the author of this book is a Labubu Man. He's not quite that, but there's something really interesting going on there about guys who've internalized the idea that to be a straightforwardly aggressive man in a style in a perhaps quote unquote old fashioned style or more overtly patriarchal is bad, and that puts you in continuity with Andrew Tate and other people who are bad, which is obviously by definition. And therefore we must be something which is softer and more consensual and more kind of Labubu-ish, or I don't know, something.
Good news, AG1 just released their next-gen formula. It is a more advanced, clinically backed version of the product that I've been drinking every day for years. So you still get the same one-scoop ritual, but now with an even more thoughtful formulation, flavor, and 4 clinical trials behind it. AG1 has been evolving since 2010, continuously improving alongside the latest research, and AG1 Next Gen is the result, clinically shown to help fill common nutrient gaps and support gut health, even in people who already eat well. In one study, it boosted healthy bacteria in the gut by 10 times. And if you're still unsure, they've got a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it and try it for 3 months. And if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. Right now, you can get a year's free supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs, plus the 90-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. That's drinkag1.com/modernwisdom.
Circling back to Chris's opening question, is it possible that everyone's having less sex because of the Labubu male? But seriously, maybe it's crossed my mind sometimes too. We need more polarity.
No. Well, look, this is... to me, this just seems like the progeny of MeToo in many ways. That the message that a lot of men, the vast majority of well-behaved, sexually disciplined, not pushy men took was, I shouldn't be pushy. It's like, well, yeah, you already weren't that pushy, and maybe you actually weren't pushy enough. So the issue with the message, don't be too pushy, is that the men who really need to hear it will ignore it, and the men who are already predisposed to believe it will take it to heart. So what you end up with is this weird selection effect where the bad actors still act badly, and the ones who actually probably needed a little bit of a helping hand to go forward are like, oh, holy fuck. And maybe the Labubu Man is just the final form of that.
He's taking it too seriously.
At the risk of just pouring petrol on this conversation and then flinging a match in, it strikes me that if your thesis is right, and in fact somewhere buried in all of this is actually a low level of a sort of low level revulsion at Labubu Man, and a yearning for a more direct and unmediated form of masculine sexual aggression. It has been suggested by people on the internet whose names I now forget that this is in fact a factor in the extremely politically sensitive subject of migration into the country across the English Channel. As in, there are
Here we go.
there are progressive women who
I know
kind of enjoy the appearance of young men who haven't been labubified yet.
Wow.
Or this is not
because
my
Labubu
thesis.
hasn't reached Syria.
Labubu has not reached Syria.
Right.
These guys are not noodle armed. These guys, in fact, have demonstrated considerable gumption in making it from wherever it is that they've originated to England. I mean, it's a genuinely impressive level of gumption involved.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe
That's spicy.
What did you say?
So spicy. Yeah, you really.
Two things.
Okay.
One is
so having just I'm just gonna Louise, I'm gonna hand you the petrol can.
So I do actually agree with you. I was speaking to a journalist friend recently.
No, you're not agreeing with me. You're agreeing with people on the internet whose names I don't know.
I was speaking to a journalist friend recently who had been in Calais and speaking to these guys who are trying to come over the channel. And he said, like, what is really amazing is you'll talk to these guys about their life stories and it will be like, oh yeah, so I came from Sudan and I walked across half of Africa and then I got to Libya and then I got enslaved and so I was taken to another country where I was a slave and then I was gang raped and then I somehow escaped from that and then I swam across the channel, whatever. It's like they tell this story and it's the most appalling thing you've ever heard, and they're physically, it's evident that they've been through this, and these are like 20-year-old guys or something, and then you ask them, why did you do it? And they're like, just like Manchester United. Like they'll offer some like really weird, inadequate answer. It's not even like I want access to the welfare state, because you could have got that in other European countries. It's quite like strange. And I do kind of get your point that there's an element of like crazy macho-ness about it.
Wow, if you're prepared to go through all of that for Manchester United, imagine what you do for your family and your partner.
I suppose so. The only thing I would say though is that the impression that I get from a lot of women who are very, very invested in refugees welcome kind of stuff is that they really infantilize these men at the same time, and there's a degree to which they're kind of scooping up the vulnerable. You know,
you think
so
this is a bit like the American pitbull ladies phenomenon?
Yeah. But he's just misunderstood.
This is. I'll just add some.
Put it in there. It's okay.
This is another one of these discourses. Actually, probably related obliquely to Labubu Man. It was one of these memes that sloshes around in which a certain subtype of usually single American progressive women are accused of adopting actually obviously murderously sociopathically dangerous rescue pit bulls as a kind of proxy for the sort of man they would never dream of admitting to fancying in real life.
Right, okay.
So in a sense, you know, officially they're only allowed to date Labubu Man, and that's in fact the only people who are within their social circles immediately. Okay. And so they adopt a pit bull to just kind of compensate.
So I see
his lack of...
I see your Labubu Man.
Yeah.
And I raise you the newly nomenclatured himbo, which has actually come back around. The new dream guy is beefy, placid, and politically ambiguous. Amid pitched debates about masculinity, the himbo stands stoically above it all. As an alternative to the thinking man, the Renaissance man, or the family man, today's himbo offers just man, a blurry image, a blunt political instrument, or just a caricature, the human equivalent of a smiley face. The himbo is, in many senses, unreal, a wish-fulfillment fantasy. His true self is concealed behind a set of doe-like eyes, the content of his inferiority forever unconfirmed.
So is this like Ken in Greta Gerwig's... He says towards the end, if I'd realised patriarchy wasn't just about horses, I wouldn't have bothered.
Hunk with a heart of gold. Hunk with a heart of gold. I think, who was the dude that did Magic Mike? Who was the actor that played Magic Mike?
Oh,
Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum is often put forward as like himbo. Channing Tatum follows me on Instagram, so I actually quite like him. But hunk with a heart of gold, the human equivalent of a smiley face. What we've got here is basically, I think you're trying to cross the streams between Labubu Man in terms of disposition and front cover of a dark romance novel in terms of presentation.
I mean, it's a tricky tightrope for women, because on the one hand you want, and this is an eternal conundrum, you want a man who is going to protect you and protect your children and provide for you in times of extreme threat, right? But you also don't want someone who's going to beat you up and beat up your children. And so that's tricky.
The line that you've got to perennially walk.
Yeah. And so the himbo is I love a himbo, right? And the impression from my female friends is that himbos are very high status. I remember a friend talking to me about how attractive a himbo was, and she said she really, really didn't want, I guess, a Labubu Man who was like excessively intellectual. She said if I came home and he was like, I just read something in the New York Review of Books, I would kill myself. Is not what she wants from a man, right? A himbo does kind of tread that tightrope. Like, he's physically capable, clearly, of doing what's needed if you're at risk, but he's so sweethearted that he would never turn on you.
Again, I mean, skipping sideways through this sort of untidy territory, there was a piece, I think it was in the New York Times, which is often a sort of barometer for what American middle class women in their 30s think about stuff in general. I think it was the New York Times, but it was somewhere in that zone, that discursive zone anyway. On a fascinating new trend of women marrying down, and what they were actually talking about. Yeah. No, but what they were talking about wasn't actually women marrying down. It was women marrying below their educational level.
Yeah.
Actually, they were financially they were marrying up because these were women with maybe a degree and a master's or a degree and a PhD or something, but no money and a mountain of debt.
It's like complex hypergamy.
Who were marrying construction entrepreneurs, or a successful plumber with several employees who was turning over chunks of change. And so in straightforward financial terms, it's at least a match, if not marrying up. But in intellectual and in terms of a particular type of caste, as distinct from straightforward economic levels, she was some of these women were experiencing it as kind of marrying down. I think there's something. I think that speaks to your himbo in the sense that very sensibly these extremely overeducated women have married some guy who's going to appreciate their brains and also be able to pay the mortgage, without trying to compete.
It seems like the himbo is economically prepared and maybe educationally underdeveloped, whereas the Labubu Man is maybe economically underdeveloped and overeducated.
I mean, would you rather have a guy who can talk? Would you rather have a guy who can talk contemporary literature but can't afford to buy you dinner, or some guy who can fix the plumbing when it goes wrong and just doesn't care what you think about books?
I have a funny story about this. It occurs to me that my parents technically have that dynamic because my mum has a PhD and my dad has an undergraduate degree and then became a lawyer. But anyone who knows, PhDs don't translate into big money, right? So my dad's always earned more. But there was this funny story about a time when he was at work, this is the age before the internet, and someone referred to King Lear in talking about office politics. He was like, someone's behaving like King Lear in relation to someone, and he didn't understand what they were saying. And so he called my mum like very quietly and said, what happens in King Lear? It was a funny example of this.
Well, there's something there. How much do women find that endearing? How much do women find needing to intellectually coddle their partner beyond up to a certain point? How much do they find that as noble savage?
I personally find that endearing. I don't know if I'm representative.
If he's also sort of generally red-blooded in his bearing and behaviour, and is also capable of fixing stuff around the house that goes wrong, I don't really see the problem.
What about if it's very girly?
What about if it's the opposite though? What about if it's somebody who can tell you what has been happening in the New York Review of Books, but needs to call his dad if there's something broken in the toilet at your house?
I mean, competence is very hot. Or should,
Right, but this is competence within a particular domain. Because you could say the noble savage is incompetent when it comes to his intellectual development.
I mean, I suppose, zooming back a bit, you could probably make the case that we're currently in an age of flux, where the sort of never-ending growth really does feel like it's come to an end. Politics is quite uncertain. We've got war in Europe for the first time in a very long time. And all kinds of things don't feel as certain and safe and stable as they used to. And it could be that, in fact, some of these very instinctive mating patterns are going to shift, or are perhaps already shifting in the light of how people assess their own prospects in that very much more uncertain world. So women who might have gone for the intellectual guy because he can always buy in a plumber, are going to assess, who their looks match and economic match is likely to be for a long-term partnership, and think, actually, like Labubu Man, I need somebody who knows how to use a shotgun, or there are various levels of deranged preparishness that you can apply to that, depending on your filter bubble. But you understand what I'm saying?
It's like that study that men like fatter women when they're hungry.
Right. So,
I'm sure you've
women,
economic security hypothesis.
So it sounds like perhaps the equivalent for women. Women like more
masculine men when it seems like there's
when the
chaos
things
going on.
tough.
That's a fucking awesome. Mac and Murphy, if you're listening, go and do that study for me.
I mean,
Thank
it
you.
seems like if that's empirically researchable, but intuitively it feels completely right.
Super easy. Whatever the equivalent of the social, the VIX index, if you familiar with that volatility within the market, whatever the social equivalent of that is. Okay, let's just have what are the popular types of the preferred types of men? Would you want one that's more domineering or one that's a little bit more casual?
Whereas the point of being able to discourse about the New York Review of Books is status games, right? And so and that's very much Maslow's hierarchy of needs tippy top. So that's the sort of thing that you're going to jettison pretty quickly in these kind of conditions.
Oh, so the fact that you have the ability to do that suggests to me that in some ways maybe it's a luxury position. Oh, you've got the bottom levels looked after, or maybe you're unable to look after the bottom levels and you've kind of outsourced them or skipped over them in some sort of way.
Yes, I think that my friend who threatened suicide if her boyfriend read the New York Review of Books, I think what she was referencing was someone who couldn't do the other stuff, who was...
He'd turned the triangle upside down.
Yeah, that's what's unattractive.
So the only final bit on this himbo thing, what is it about the kind of... It's not someone who's saying, I want the Renaissance man, I want the thinking man, including, because presumably you could say, I want to max out his physicality and also max out his mind. Yeah. But it seems like it's actually preferable to have the slightly more doughy-eyed human smiley face as a partner. The one thing that I would sort of maybe throw into the mix there is that if you have somebody that is both domineering, prestigious, sort of able to make things happen in the physical world, and also has the intellect to be a little bit more conniving, you run a much higher risk there of this guy's maybe going to be quite sought after in many ways. He's maybe going to be able to outwit me. Is that an element, or what do you think is going on with this desire to actually kind of turn down the volume on the intellectual nature? Simplicity?
Or is it maybe a bit...
I mean, realistically, guys like that are just relatively rare, so partly it's just a numbers game.
Yeah. But also I feel like it's a bit girly to be too preoccupied with.
Thought and emotions.
That's the thing. Just looping all of this back to the Taylor Swift theme. Would you not say that actually Taylor's choice of a husband perfectly encapsulates the himbo?
Also
and
Lana Del Rey. I love her choice of a husband.
Yeah. She's the kind of right-wing coded equivalent, isn't she?
Lana Del Rey has married a...
Wasn't he like a crocodile
wrangler?
Yeah. It's incredible thing
from Louisiana, I want to say.
Right.
Something like that. He's a completely normal blue-collar guy. I mean, I don't know if blue-collar is the right word if you're a crocodile wrangler, but
green collar.
He does it completely very skilled, very impressive.
Big arms, masculine.
Yeah. And has nothing
extremely
to do.
Competent.
But then I was thinking, if you're Lana Del Rey or
you don't need
Taylor,
the money.
You don't need the money. And actually, marrying someone who's in your field of work and it will inevitably less successful than you. Is a nightmare
because you're able to do more comparison hierarchically. What does it mean to date hypergamously if you are going cross?
Who's above you if you're Taylor?
Exactly.
Exactly. Oh, well, I picked someone from another industry. I picked someone that's
there is
not.
no way of doing hypergamy if you're Taylor Swift because she's just right
top of her own hierarchy.
She's the apex. Yeah. She's the apex of so many different hierarchies. That
have you read The Status Game by?
But Travis Kelce, he's enormous.
Yeah.
He's a successful.
Well, they'll outlift her. He's able to outrun her.
He can pick her up and chuck. You can probably juggle her.
Well, he's got prestige
and he's got standing in his own field,
and specifically in a cohort that she does not.
That's right.
So if you walk into a different room, there are tons of people that couldn't give a fuck about Taylor Swift, but will sprint toward Travis Kelce.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this is, if you've read Will Storr's A Status Game, you've probably interviewed him at some point. His really, really good piece of life advice is that everyone is completely obsessed with status. You can't pretend that you're not. It's just the natural human condition to be preoccupied with status. But you can choose which status game you compete in to some extent. And you can say, I realise that one is bad for me, or that I'm not going to flourish in it. But you can just choose another one. And so, having a spouse who's competing in a different status game from yourself, I think is very sensible.
A young friend who also has something of an internet platform told me recently that he had tried dating women who also were internet figures of some sort, and it was just hideous.
It feels too similar.
It was too much of a
comparison's too direct.
And there's I guess I don't think this wasn't his point, but it struck me that if you're both people, if you both have a platform, you both have an audience, the temptation to turn your relationship into content would be
This
totally
is Freya
overwhelming.
India's thing, right? That all relationships are just brand collaborations.
Right, and it doesn't have to be like that. But you really, if you're very online, you have to choose. You know, you're going to survive much longer and stay much saner if your partner is not online at all, or is it just not very interested in that.
Have you heard the theory that aliens are just the end of human evolution? That they're completely. Yeah, I'm bringing it back. I promise. They're sort of huge heads. Human heads have got bigger over time, although they actually got smaller at one point as well. But human heads are big. We seem to be getting lower testosterone, less muscled, less sort of, domineering physically. And that aliens, the classic sort of big head, big eyes thing, is the completely atrophied in the body, but overdeveloped cognitively.
Well, they are to us as we are to chimps.
And yeah, because we are weaker, bigger brains. Yeah. And then you just keep running that forward.
Even less hair on aliens as well.
Good point. I never really assessed the hair of an alien, but
hairless,
it's just interesting to hear where your mind goes. I wonder whether Labubu Man is kind of the same sort of, I've adapted to my local environment. My local environment is one where if I'm quite flaccid as a human, and like a very flaccid human, I can sit in an office chair for longer, basically.
Right. So the interesting, civilizations can go down as well as up. How long would it take after the shit hit the fan, hypothetically speaking, in civilizationally, before Labubu Man got his act together? Was either selected aggressively out of the picture altogether, or actually just learned to shoot?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many people say if our country went to war, there's no way that I would fight for them. I've got asthma. Sorry, no, my athlete's foot precludes me from being able to go into the. There's like all manner of different excuses, and without selection pressure, people fold around whatever that situation is. They kind of get molded and shaped by it.
I think it's a really serious problem right now. If we did have some kind of serious strife in this country.
I mean, it strikes me that one of the structural problems is that 2 or 3 generations of young people have now been taught, very methodically by the education system, by the sort of ambient public conversation, that nation states are just not really, they're not the real political community. And actually the real political community is everyone, is every human on the planet. We're all just a continuous one big happy family. Under those circumstances, the idea that you could just snap people overnight back into thinking of themselves as an us just in the context of the nation state, particularly in an age of high demographic change.
You're trying to redraw territory.
So having said no, actually universal humanity, yada yada yada, and explicitly teaching that, and explicitly teaching children that nationalism is bad and that it caused Hitler and the Second World War and carnage and death and disaster for decades and generation after generation, and then you turn around the next day and you're like, oh, by the way, we're going to reinstate the draft because Putin. Do you blame the kids for saying no? Fuck off.
That's such a good point. Them? Holy shit.
I mean, even leaving, there are various kind of uglier and more bitter versions of that story to do with ethnopolitics and so on. But fundamentally, I think that's the crux of it, because it goes across the board. It's not just the right-wing Zoomers. It's also the left-wing ones. They just don't buy it because they've been taught not to buy it.
Except that generally, I mean, if you watch these endless vox pops that you're referring to, where you ask people, would you go to war for your country? And they all say no. What normally happens is that anyone who's a member of an ethnic minority will say, oh, but I'm Jamaican, or no, because I'm not from here, or something. And actually you scratch the surface and everyone has a degree of ethnocentrism.
And this is actually what worries me, that having abolished or done their best to educate young children and young people out of thinking in terms of nation states, that people are not going to abandon having a tribe, but they're just going to draw the tribe around people who look like them.
Because
and once you scale that up to the level of, you start looking at lines of conflict internal to a country, along possibly different tribes, but a kind of Ulster situation, potentially even within the country itself, which is a disturbing prospect.
Yeah,
it really is.
Because of course nation states are modern inventions and they are a bit fake.
They are.
Yeah.
And I mean, and if you look at the flag phenomenon that we've been seeing a lot recently, that feels to me like a precursor to a kind of Ulsterization happening within the United Kingdom, which is deeply deeply concerning.
I've been watching loads of TikTok videos of people increasingly commonly having confrontations between people putting up flags and people trying to take them down. A bridge near our house has now had, I think, 4 iterations of people putting up flags, taking them down, putting them up. And they leave the cable ties every time, so that there's just like a porcupine kind of thing on the
graveyard of where patriotism used to be.
Yeah, and people putting up counter things and whatever. It's like a whole thing. And there's quite a lot of TikTok videos of people having these confrontations. The main thing that jumps out at me as a Brit who's very sensitive to these things is the class difference. So the flaggers are always working class and the deflaggers are always middle class, and it's really obvious.
Yeah.
Why?
And why is it obvious, or why is this happening?
Why is it happening?
Because I think the whole thing is a class war. Always has been.
I think that's basically right.
Yeah.
I was sort of obliquely thinking about writing about the Norman Conquest earlier this week. This is where that particular class war began, because the English class system was originally not just a caste system but also a racialized caste system. In that the ruling class, the Normans arrived and just replaced the whole Anglo-Saxon ruling class with their own, and they were a different ethnic group.
And I guess didn't interbreed that much.
Well, I mean, to an extent after a while, but people with Norman surnames are still to this day more likely to be wealthy than those with Saxon.
No way.
Overrepresented at Oxbridge.
People with names like Smith and Cooper are less likely to be rich than people with names like Glanville or,
Dennis
or Grosvenor.
Yeah.
Indeed. The current Duke of Westminster, Hugh Grosvenor, can trace his ancestry all the way back to 1066.
Yeah.
And is still a billionaire, still one of the richest people in the country. I think he's number 15.
Gregory Clark is punching the air right now.
So I mean, you can never mind critical race theory. England has had a racialized caste system all for 1,000 years, and I think actually, really, genuinely, that's a significant factor in what Louise is describing about this class war. Yeah. There is a subset of more well-off, culturally middle or upper class English people who identify much more with the Norman disposition. And then there are a group of people who think of themselves. I mean, it's even right there in the conflict between English and British. British values, quote unquote,
and English flags versus
Union Jacks. English flags, right?
Yeah,
it's
mostly. They mostly alternate them. But I've noticed that, like, if you go to touristy places, they have Union Jacks up anyway because it's a bit twee. Like, that's not flagging.
The St. George thing is Saxon.
Flagging has to necessitate St. George's crosses, at least some of them, and it's an anti-government gesture.
Yeah.
And again, the comments you'll get all the time on social media, it's such a classic, like, midwit normie take, is, they don't have any GCSEs and they don't have any teeth. Like, basically something very, very classist directed at nativists. And I'm like, I mean, yes, you are right to identify that rift, and it's a consequence of the relationship with the globalised economy. If you do the sort of job that is vulnerable to the importation of cheap labour,
then obviously
you're going to hate it so much more than if you're working a completely different industry. Like, yes, you correctly identify this class fissure, and what we've seen for decades now has been upper middle classes inviting demographic change, which doesn't hurt them and does hurt the working classes.
I mean, it drove Brexit, and they learned nothing.
Yeah.
It's a similar dynamic to what happened in America, but it's got a uniquely British flavour because of how...
Because of the class system.
Correct. Correct.
Bluntly, because of the Normans.
Yeah, well, look, I use the word posh and get laughed at in America because it feels like me, I don't know, talking about herringbone or something. It's just an odd term to use because even though most Americans understand what I mean, it's such an odd, archaic... Like, you don't talk about that. You would talk about race or education or wealth.
It's probably
You're from the northeast, aren't you?
Newcastle. Well, Stockton.
So you probably don't exactly have skin in either sides of these games because you're probably Viking in heritage.
I have no idea. I need to do my 23andMe. I need to do my Ancestry.com.
Well, don't, because data security, they're about to sell the whole database. So
God, and all of the murders I've done will come up. Yeah, they sell my data.
Don't do that. But I mean, people from the northeast are ancestrally much more likely to be Danish, Scandinavian in heritage.
I sit outside of the hierarchy.
So you can throw tomatoes at both the Normans and the Saxons. I do, I'm sure.
If you haven't been feeling as sharp or energized as you'd like, getting your blood work done is the best place to start, which is why I partnered with Function. They run lab tests twice a year that monitor over 100 biomarkers. They've got a team of expert physicians that take the data, put it in a simple dashboard, and give you actionable insights and recommendations to improve your health and lifespan. They track everything from your heart health to your hormone levels to your thyroid function and nutrient deficiencies. They even screen for 50 types of cancer at stage 1, which is 5 times more data than you get from an annual physical. And getting your blood work done and drawn and analyzed like this would usually cost thousands, but with Function, it is only $499. And right now, they're giving 1,000 Modern Wisdom listeners another $100 off, bringing it down to $399. So just go to the link in the description below or head to functionhealth.com/modern wisdom. That's functionhealth.com/modern wisdom. I don't know whether this is precisely true. And I hate the word going back to something that it feels like we just dispensed with, because the word woke is so sort of tried and done and kind of lame. However, this feels like a uniquely new British brand of something akin to woke.
Flagging.
Yes, and the response to it. And it's the reason that I want to, that I haven't got a different word for it. Broke wouldn't work because Britain woke. It has a dynamic that is exclusively present or mostly present in the UK, which is this sort of classist approach, because it exists a little bit in the US, that people that were left of centre that were very pro-immigration. But the reason that they were doing it and the sort of accusations that they would make weren't the same. They weren't about in the same way about being uneducated, in the same way about the way that people sort of presented the no teeth thing.
Although isn't that what Hillary was saying with the basket of deplorables? Like it was basically a class statement. It was more veiled. Whereas I guess here it tends to be more explicit.
It's overt.
Which was probably because we've had 1,000 years of not being invaded, right? So you can build up.
They can ossify.
Exactly.
Yeah, the situation in America is much more complicated because everybody there.
Where do I stand in this hierarchy? I'm not sure. I've only been here for 5 minutes.
Almost everybody there is technically an immigrant.
Yeah.
At one point or another.
Yeah.
So it's very much harder to have to do the nativist thing because, you know, the most recent Anglophone arrivals weren't that long ago.
Yeah. And it's also a problem, of course, because here our elites are so incredibly Yankee-brained that they assume, you'll hear people talk about Britain being a nation of immigrants. No, it isn't. That is factually incorrect. Like Britain was 99% plus white British in the 1950s.
It does strike me at times that casually conflating invasion and immigration is possibly not the wins at the middle-class advocates.
Yeah.
Imagine it is anyway.
Yeah, they're like, but what about the Vikings?
I can see some ways that could backfire.
Not remember Lindisfarne.
Did we not embrace the Vikings? I know. But because they're so Yankee-brained, they don't realise that actually, no, like people here are indigenous to these islands, going back a very long way.
I did
it's
think
not
about
the same as in America.
I did wonder about what a land acknowledgement in the UK would look like.
Douglas Murray did this once, actually, at giving a speech, and he did a land acknowledgement to the Duke of Westminster, who owned the land. It was very funny. It was very classic Douglas.
Although, really, strictly speaking, the Duke of Westminster also counts as a coloniser. Well, because that's Hugh Grosvenor, who arrived with the Normans.
Oh, there we go.
So Hugh Grosvenor ought to be doing a land acknowledgement to the Saxons.
Your surname has scuppered you. Looping it back to the perennial discussion about stupid things to do with relationships on the internet. Have you heard of princess treatment?
What? No.
Oh, allow me. I mean, you are spending a lot of time on TikTok. I would have expected this to come across. Okay. Princess treatment refers to various supposedly fairy tale worthy gestures made by women's partners, including but never limited to lattes in bed, flowers every Friday, partner funded pedicures, and doors being open for you. Nearly 130,000 Instagram posts congregate under it. However, this is immediately being taken to reductio ad absurdum. Courtney Palmer, self-proclaimed housewife princess. I do not interact with the waitress. I do not open any doors, and I do not order my own food. You do not need to talk unless you are spoken to. You are not going to be laughing loudly, speaking loudly, or demanding the attention of the restaurant. So, princess treatment.
Is this not sort of lifestyle BDSM with
I was going to say, it's a sex thing.
It's totally a sex thing. It's a sex thing.
How have you both arrived at this? This is like that. This is like that fucking anti-wisdom thing where I haven't seen it. Like you're looking at this optical illusion. I'm like, what?
This is kind of
explain to the muggle in the room.
It's a Mary Louise group chat running joke about the trad wife. I mean, there's the trad wife or autogynephile, but that's not this. There's also
what the trad wife autogynephile.
Okay, but there's also the continuity between right-wing complementarian tradwife discourse and lifestyle BDSM, which it seems to me is just it's really just a question of inflection, but it's basically the same conversation.
You're going to have to bring it down to earth a little bit for me.
Okay, you do. Which of us is going?
Imagine that I didn't read the first 3 Harry Potter books and I've come in at the 4th, please.
So on the one hand, you have, it's often very Protestant coded, sometimes quite American. There's a sort of religiously inflected discourse about how men do one set of tasks and play one set of roles within a long-term relationship, and women play the other, and everyone comes together as ordained by God in this dual dance of complementary unity, and then everything is good. Mm-hmm. And then in an entirely different political filter bubble, you have the people who embrace lifestyle BDSM, which is it's a way of living in a long-term relationship where one person is always explicitly the dominant one who just gets to decide everything, and the other person is also always the submissive one who just says yes, master.
There's a degree of entitlement though here, which doesn't sound superbly submissive.
Well, I mean, this is where it gets. This is actually both complementarian right-wing trad types and also lifestyle BDSMers will tell you that in fact the wife / submissive, depending on how you're framing it, has plenty of say, because in fact
she's the one putting it online. It's never the man who's filming content about this, is it?
That's
always
true.
The woman.
That's true as that. Well. Oh, this is too much of a rabbit hole.
No, go do it. Let's run it. I'm fascinated. I'm fucking Alice in Wonderland here.
Women do this simultaneous, like, I'm so submissive, and there's a lot of humble brag going on as well. Like, by the way, my husband could afford to buy me all
the long nails,
stuff.
long hair, high heels.
Exactly, right. But also, she's calling the shots in terms of their social media presence.
Yeah, and also,
which is really what matters.
In these sorts of very deliberately stylized, polarized relationships, assuming it's a long-term affectionate relationship that both parties want to continue and sustain and maintain, then actually the person who's formally giving way all the time has a lot of say, because the other person has to second guess what they want all the time.
That's interesting.
If you see, because I mean, you can't just order somebody around and say, no, you're gonna go and lick the floor clean or do the dishes or whatever. Because if you make decisions for both of you for long enough, and actually the other person doesn't like your decisions, eventually, the nominally
you become
submissive
trained
one,
by them.
Well, the nominally submissive one will vote with their feet. Assuming that it's a consensual, loving relationship. Otherwise, you have to make decisions that both of you want to abide by. So actually, it's not as commanding as all of that. But it just sort of reflects.
Yeah, I mean, we both feel like there's nothing wrong with complementary gender roles. Like within reason, they make sense. It's fine. Like no complaint. What is weird about the lifestyle BDSM is when it's clearly done in an exaggerated way as a sex thing. Like the motivation is not this makes the household run more smoothly, this makes sense of our financial lives, etc. It's this turns me on, and I'm also doing it for an online audience.
That's weird, yeah.
That's weird.
But I mean, the difference, I don't really see a huge amount of difference in kind between that and princess treatment. If she's like, I'm just going to sit there in the restaurant, and you have to guess. You as my date / partner have to guess what it is that I want to eat and get it right. And you have to do all the legwork of interacting with the underlings. You have to pay. And I'm just going to sit there. And nominally, yes, you get to decide everything and you have the power. But also, you have to guess and you have to get it right. So who actually has the power in that situation?
That's a great point. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I really have seen through the matrix here. Fuck me. Women are so much more sophisticated than men are with this bullshit.
But yeah, I mean, all of this, of course, with the caveat that it assumes that it's a mutually affectionate and consensual relationship. There is also a continuum between that and domestic abuse, because if the one
financial
person is
prisoner,
financial imprisonment, domestic abuse, and so on, where somebody is calling the shots and actually the other person isn't free to leave through whatever combination of coercive control or other kind of.
Does this not play into another one of those lines that needs to be walked? That it would be nice to be looked after.
Yeah.
It would be nice for my partner to know me so well that I actually can sort of take my foot off the gas a little bit. Wouldn't that be lovely? And then if you overdo the dose, the response curve gets really squirrely when you get toward the point, well, I can't leave anymore because I don't have my own phone. I don't have my own bank account. I don't have my own access to anything.
It's the big trade-off of traditional gender roles, that the woman has no financial independence.
And as soon as you derogate loyalty, as soon as you end up with divorce becoming more societally accepted and people being able to move from partner to partner more freely, that means that the cost for the man, the cost for anybody of leaving is so high and so common. Is so low and it's so common that you need to have the insurance policy at all times, because the likelihood of this just being marriage one as opposed to the marriage means that you've got to have the back door.
I mean, it strikes me that maybe a possible explanation for why these complementary gender roles tend to appear either where somebody is extremely online and posting about it a lot, or else in the context of religious communities. It might make sense in terms of that failure mode, the sort of abusive failure mode, in that if you're posting online about what a surrendered wife you are, actually you're probably making bank, and so you're not all that surrendered after all, because there's this other dimension to it.
Yeah.
You know, do you remember the whole discourse about Ballerina Farm and that?
No.
Oh, okay. She's an Instagram star married to the heir of JetBlue.
You don't know about Ballerina Farm, Chris?
Don't
You're
turn and look at me. You didn't even know about Himbos. Fucking hell.
You have how many bajillion followers on Instagram? You've never come across Ballerina Farm?
Okay.
This is entirely distinct influencer universe.
Look at the echo chambers are very
place.
echoey here. Yeah.
The internet is a big place. Okay, so Ballerina Farm, very beautiful, very accomplished sort of trad wife.
Hannah Needleman.
Hannah Needleman, married to the scion of the JetBlue family, and inherited a load of money, and they have a farm where she does trad things and has lots of beautiful children.
Okay.
And makes yogurt, and it's all very crunchy.
Almonds.
I mean, right, exactly. It's lovely content. It's also like the content engine which powers actually a very profitable business for them, selling like KitchenAid and yogurt and whatever.
Yeah.
I think her sourdough starter kits cost like $100.
Yeah.
You know, she's doing all right at it, and yet there's this whole discourse about whether or not she's actually oppressed, and I'm like, what? Have you?
One of the things that people, because she was profiled in the Times, the Times of London a while ago, and it was mentioned, there were various details mentioned which a lot of women primarily on the internet thought were alarming, like how exhausted she got. I mean, I'm not surprised she gets exhausted because she has so many kids close together, yeah. But things like they don't have a nanny, they don't have any domestic help, but despite obviously being able to afford it. And they were like, oh, this is a sign that he's oppressing her. And I thought, no, you know what, I actually get it. I think that there's a weird kind of Anglo thing going on, including Anglo-American, of like, no, I'm going to do the hard thing on my own. I'm going to do the deliberately difficult thing. But also,
you know, having recorded a few podcasts and seen how the sausage gets made, you know, you look at how well produced her content is. There's a ton of people in that house all the time.
Oh yeah, just not a nanny specifically,
right.
But like that. That makes sense to me. I think that makes sense of her personality. And of course, it is Hannah who is making all the content. She's running the show in that sense.
She's driving.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me that the trad meme gets propagated either from within religious communities where there is actually a much thicker relationship. There is a thicker community of people surrounding the couple. You know, again, this is not foolproof because, you know, domestic abuse happens within religious communities as well. But it provides some kind of ideological scaffolding for a couple, such that, you know, potentially that could help to keep a relationship in line, you know, and stop abuse creeping in, and make sure things are able to remain healthy.
Is that kind of a insurance policy that if I'm the one that's in control of the Instagram account, that ultimately if I am mistreated, it might be a financial victory for you, but it's a branding victory for me?
Well, I mean, again, it's not foolproof. You know, I mean, this is I can't name names, but I know from one noted right-wing content producing woman that she knows of, and several women within that space who are posting sunny tradwife content while their husbands are also not treating them very well. You know, this also happens. So it's definitely not foolproof as an insurance policy. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a fallen world, right? You know, people screw up and do horrible things. And I'm not sure there's a guaranteed way of hedging against that.
One way that does traditionally sort of work to hedge against being mistreated by your husband is male kin, your own male kin. Like, is it Sonny Corleone in Godfather who beats up his sister's abuser or something like that, right? Like, in really those really traditional societies, if your recourse as a woman, if your husband is mistreating you,
your dad goes around and breaks his legs.
That's the issue of patrilocal and matrilocal.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably something, Chris, that you're more able to speak to than either of us, which is about the formation, like the formation of virtuous men.
I'm glad that you look at me and you think formation of virtuous men.
I mean, as the only guy in this conversation, you know, unfortunately, I think this one's yours to speak. But it seems to me that, you know, where have all the good men gone? Actually, the one part of the answer to that is that, you know, if we want good men, we need to be forming good men. And actually, what forms men is not women; it's other men. And so, and I'm not sure we think nearly hard enough or specifically enough or concretely enough about how we go about forming men. And I mean, this sort of goes to your Labubu figure. You know, if the men that we're forming are sort of noodle-armed Labubu guys rather than virtuous, capable, competent men, then that's not just a problem for men, that's a problem for everyone.
Well, I think a lot of the advice that men are given is about how to behave in a manner that makes women feel more comfortable. But if which it seems to continually be reinforced, male competition theory seems to be highly predictive of female attraction as opposed to actually female attraction. So this is the David Putz study. Have you seen this one where they looked? Oh, this is fucking brilliant. You're gonna love this. So, photos of men were shown to both men and women. The women were asked to rate how attractive these men were. The men were asked to rate how likely they thought it was that this man would be able to beat them in a fight. The photos of the men were real people, and they were tracked. 12 months later, they brought the photo men into the lab and said, how many sexual partners have you had over the last year? The female attractiveness rating was basically non-predictive, and the male intimidation rating was highly correlated.
Competence is hot. Competence cashes out ultimately as can this guy protect me in a fist fight?
But the argument,
they also have higher sex drives, maybe, right? They're higher T.
There's some variables in here. They're going to be more forthcoming. They're going to be less agreeable. They're going to be, chasing after it, making it happen as opposed to waiting for it to come to them. But still, you would think, at least given that women are the gatekeepers and this is a direct, I find this guy more attractive than that one, you would have assumed it would have had maybe equal amounts of predictive power, but it didn't. The ovulatory shift thing got another decapitation the other day, which was women don't find men with beards any more or less attractive, but they are more sexually successful, and men find them more intimidating. So it's this, whatever it is, women don't help you win, they just wait at the finish line to see who goes first. And it is male competition theory for this. But the issue is if guys are trying to Labubu reverse engineer their way into what they think women want, a lot of the time
they're entirely going about it the wrong way.
Yeah,
we made Labubu into a verb.
Yes, yeah, they have Labubu. You've done gone Labubu'd yourself.
Oh no, he's Labubu'd himself. Oh, the uterus just climbed up into my chest and died.
So I think the issue is, and this is what I really wanted to get into here, post MeToo, being able to talk frankly about anything which is not nerfed, rounded off edges, Labubuified, flaccid soy men, seems to be encouraging a type of guy that is perilously close to this world that we only just managed to reach escape velocity from. Like, we just got away from this thing, which was entitlement, domineering, controlling entitlement, even though the Labubu men also have their own type of entitlement in a very sort of conniving, malicious, sneaky way. I don't know where you get male-to-male advice on what it is that women truly want for long-term success, because what you end up with there is just going back to pickup artistry. Like, almost all of the advice that comes out of the red pill world is for short-term mating. Right? It's almost all about how to sort of do the fugazi thing to get a woman into bed. That's not necessarily what is good for you as a man to signal for long-term intention to her, or to be effective for her as a long-term partner, or for yourself to actually form yourself into the kind of partner that can be a good long-term option, but it'll probably get them into bed.
I mean, I keep coming back to my conviction that this has to happen offline. Like, online advice is no good. Like, whether it's Jordan Peterson, it could be the most brilliant.
Because it's reductive?
Well, but because they don't, the person doesn't know you. And actually, actionable advice, actionable model probably comes from trusted, decent older men in your own community. And really,
the uncles, not the aunties.
Yeah, the uncles. Yeah, but the structural problem is that those intergenerational networks are in some cases almost completely gone, and I think that problem is particularly grave for young men growing up in fatherless households.
Well, especially if
and which is it's not a coincidence that those are the guys who end up joining gangs, because they're finding mentorship from older men, and that's literally the only kind of form of older male peer group mentorship.
I literally
older male mentorship that you can get.
Sat there with Bugsy Malone, Aaron Davies, who is famous ex-gang member, now turned rapper and actor in Guy Ritchie movies, lives in Dubai, phenomenally wealthy, very, very well read, all the rest of it. And he was telling me about what it's like to be in a fatherless home. And then you have this gang, which is the surrogate of that. Yeah. I think even for me, because I didn't have many older friends or no older brothers or sisters or younger brothers or sisters, I was hungry or thirsty for role models in a way that I don't think I would have been if I'd had a more connected nuclear family. If there was more hooks for me to get in, even if it had been an older sister, right? There would have been advice that was coming down. And if your dad is busy, even if he's not absent as in not in the household, if he's absent as in there's one person working to try and fund not a salubrious wage in an attempt to try and fund 3 people's lives, like that's something that
it's still a model.
Yeah, and you're like, fuck, like I'm hungry for more. I need more. And especially if most of your interaction occurs online, but online you're worried about saying something which is going to be deemed so toxic or old from, this was only allowed in 2012 and we've got past this and you can't talk that way about women anymore.
I also think that there's something structurally feminizing or feminine about social media discourse just in general, because it forecloses physical violence, obviously, because it's dematerialized.
Word selling your way through stuff.
Your word selling your way, like it encourages endless talking and it forecloses physical violence. Whereas in my observation, I mean, maybe you can, I'm not really, in my observation, like the society of men, absent the relation to women, sort of works the other way around. Like actually most of it is not really about conversation at all. It's about cooperating on getting something done.
Mm-hmm. That's why the Men's Sheds initiative in Australia was so good.
Yeah, and it strikes me that getting men together to talk about their feelings is precisely the wrong way to go about it.
Get them together to fix a lawnmower, and they might talk about their feelings alongside it,
or just not in a way which is mutually understood and mutually respectful. But it seems to me civilizationally suicidal to create a situation where there are ever fewer opportunities for men to be together constructively offline, learning from older men about how to work together and get stuff done, except gang situations where actually the only thing you're learning to get done is stabbing, raping, murdering, or the drug trade. That seems to me like a completely insane scenario.
I wonder if low birth rates is part of it as well, in the sense that there was this great article in the Atlantic recently about the decline of cousins. You have so many fewer cousins now than even a generation or two ago because of people obviously having fewer children. And also when people are having children later, you end up with these long, thin families where you have very old, very young, but not that much in between, not that many people. And it makes me think of that line from Kurt Vonnegut where he says, when a man and a woman have an argument nowadays, I'm just paraphrasing, they might think that they're arguing about sex or work or whatever, but what they're actually shouting at each other over and over again is, you are not enough people. Like, it's not realistic to expect your spouse to be everything that you need socially, everything. And maybe if there were more brothers and cousins and uncles, because obviously uncles have to be brothers to begin with, right? Then there would be more.
You wouldn't need to be as many people because there would be more people.
There would be more male infrastructure available in particular.
And again, this is also the dilemma, because Anglos actually don't like having. Anglos quite like
it's
being
tricky.
left alone.
Chris doesn't want the aunties.
Yeah, you don't want the aunties.
I made the fucking WhatsApp chat. Okay, look, I'm a.
I know, but you run away from them IRL.
What's that thing? Did I contradict myself? While I'm deep, I contain multitude.
Chris multiplex est.
Yeah, that's me. Before we continue, this might be the most refreshing flavor that Element has ever made. It takes the classic taste of lemonade and makes it functional, giving your body back the sodium, potassium, and magnesium that it loses when you sweat. No sugar, no junk, just the stuff that works. I've been drinking Element for over 3 years now, and it genuinely feels different when I take it versus when I don't. And they back it with the best policy, you see that I've ever seen. And no questions asked refund, no time limit. You don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you love it. Plus, they offer free shipping. in the US. And right now you can get a free sample pack of all of their favorite flavors with your first purchase by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. I'm like Neo in the Matrix, dude. You're not going to win. That's drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. Ah! Can you do a little post-mortem on MeToo? Now, we're kind of like, 10, 12 years post the peak of that.
We're both married and have been for a while. Were we the best people to do this? I don't know.
One thing I'll say about MeToo, which I think people often get wrong, this idea, so that there's a common idea, maybe it's true, that men used to approach women in bars or at work or whatever and do kind of cold approaches. And now they don't do that because of MeToo has made them scared. That period, I think, where men would find their spouses by doing cold approaches was really brief.
I think you're completely right. It roughly coincides with and is connected to the very short flash-in-the-pan era of free speech absolutism.
You're right.
Free speech absolutism and cold approach dating are basically the same phenomenon, where you abolish a whole load of old-fashioned mores and everybody just does what they want, but the afterburner of those mores is still strong enough that nobody gets up to anything too disgusting.
They're huffing on the fumes of the previous era.
They're basically huffing on the fumes of conservative sort of pre-sexual revolution behavioural norms.
Why is that important? Why is the inclusion of that period of guys cold approaching women in bars or at work, even having women in the workplace whilst men were able to date them, also relatively narrow window?
Well, it also, because cold approach presupposes a whole load of basic behavioural norms in order not just to be absolutely terrifying, call the police stuff. You know, being chatted up in the street by some guy assumes that they're going to be able to judge it so that you don't just scream and run away. Right. And so that there's an edge of fun, excitement and danger
and a high trust society
and frisson. It requires a high trust society, fundamentally.
Yeah.
And so actually does free speech absolutism, because you're never really free to say anything you want. There are always lines that it's possible to cross. That's just never not been the case, and it never will be the case. But it seemed as though it was the case. Like the people who are still really annoyed about the disappearance of free speech absolutism are maybe 10 years older than me. You know, I'm in my mid-40s now. And they came of age in an era where, you know, the social norms were still robust enough that people could make edgy jokes, but basically got away with it, and nobody really crossed the line too far. Now we're just too diverse for free speech absolutism, because there are so many different perspectives it's possible to have that, you know, you could actually genuinely end up frightening or offending or, you know, inciting violence from any number of different subgroups.
You crossed some random norm that you didn't know.
Yeah. So you know, So it's just no longer possible to, and it's the same with cold approach, because I mean, you know, going back to the sort of petrol flames conversation we were having before, you know, a lot of those scenarios are really, you know, genuinely about mutual cultural incomprehension. You know, there are guys who've shown up in the country from wherever, and maybe the only information they have about what British girls are like comes from, I don't know, Pornhub or you know, Instagram or whatever. So they have this very odd picture of what social norms here are like, and then they do their best to put them into practice, at which point some 14-year-old girl just screams and runs away, calls the police, he gets arrested, and then you know,
there's a crowd outside your migrant
and there's
hotel.
a crowd outside the hotel where you've been put up.
Yeah.
And you know, and I'm not trying to excuse any of this, but I'm saying, you know, to a degree, you know, this is a problem generated by, you know, it's cold approach, it's PUA stuff that they're trying. Literally, that's what they're trying to do. But the cultural differences are such that it's just not possible.
The game got translated into Syrian, and now we've got cold.
And now we've got protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Yeah. I don't
really know how you. Yeah, I'm not even going to try and speculate on how you solve that. But you know, certainly, like, the age of PUA is not coming back.
No.
Short, you know, until we have some kind of homogenous culture again, and even then, I'm not even sure it should. But
also historically, like,
it's just it wasn't never a thing.
Even in a super homogenous society, that's not how you meet your spouse.
Right.
Traditionally, you meet through people who know you. There's like reputations and interlocking social networks and stuff. You don't just go up to some lady in a bar and
No. I mean, that's why people used to have dinner parties. You know, people don't really have dinner parties anymore, do they? But that was how you set people up with your friends.
It's certainly not if you're bringing. It's certainly not a collegiate one where you've got both genders coming in.
Right.
You know, when I think about the dinners that I have in Austin, maybe someone brings a woman, but that woman is not there to try and meet one of you. It's their partner.
Yeah,
their
but
wife.
I mean, as recently as Bridget Jones's diary in the early aughts, she writes very, very amusingly for the time about being invited along by her smug married friends to dinner parties where she's been set up with some unbelievably awkward sort of supposedly eligible lawyer, and this keeps her, because all of her friends are trying to find someone for her to pair off with. This was just a completely normal way of doing things pre-internet dating. The smug marrieds would have dinners where they'd invite one or two other smug married couples, and then a smattering of the eligible singles
Token
that they
singles.
knew. Well, the eligible singles, and would be in a sincere effort.
They're doing auntie behaviour.
Yeah, they're auntieing.
Yeah,
because that's literally what it is. It's auntieing.
Both virtuous
and it would
awkward.
be virtuous and also often incredibly cringe. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've got dissolving social networks in IRL because everybody is living their life mediated through the internet, they've got fewer friends and they're spending less time outside, does that for you explain the demise of this particular path for people meeting? Fewer parties, fewer friends.
Also, people
fewer
are poorer and
opportunities.
their houses are smaller.
Yeah, I'm trying to
So
think
the
about...
parties are shitter, so you don't want to...
Well, there's just,
yeah.
I mean, if you're living in a house share until you're 35, you can't really invite 8 of your friends around for dinner very easily without annoying your housemates.
I'm trying to think about why I haven't done more of these dinner parties. We often do lunches and dinners with like another couple, particularly if they've got kids and then the kids play and that's great. But I don't know if I've ever done one when I've invited singles.
That's just scaled childcare. That's just
It's
smarter
fantastic.
childcare with
It's the best
scones.
tack. Yeah, just hang out with your friends with kids on a Saturday. Your Saturdays immediately improve.
But
I've not done this with singles.
It's also a massive effort. Everybody works full time. And the time and mental energy you might deploy towards that is pointed at other things. And I'm not really sure how that happens.
Needing dual income here means that there's just less time, perhaps, for the wife to think, how should we'll get the Joneses over, we'll get the...
For me personally,
Groveness.
it's more to do with the fact that we live at the very edge of a city of 10 million other people and our friends live at every point on the clock face.
Right.
And realistically, getting everyone in the same place at the same time is quite difficult. That's
If
probably
you're
what it is.
all
I
going to
don't know
get
if
together,
that's
you'd
true.
probably just meet somewhere.
Also, we can only seat 6 people at our dinner table.
Yeah. It's what I mean about, houses.
Small furniture,
houses
small
are-
houses.
Yeah.
That's
Whereas
interesting.
Bridget Jones was living in Islington?
Right, exactly. She's living in
on a
central London.
journalist salary, age like 30.
I know, yes.
On her own.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously fiction.
Yeah.
So I was thinking for a little while about MeToo to MeTee with the T app, and that you did see the T app,
yeah.
right? Okay, this was a little older. Come on, Louise.
The T app.
T app.
really?
It was that app.
Unsubstantiated gossip circulator.
Yeah.
It's a sort of reputation ruining app.
Yes, but so it was women gossiping about
Men.
men who'd
And-
screwed them over in their view. Okay.
Yeah, and then there was a big data breach. There was sequences of big data breaches.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of people on the internet who made a comparison between these videos of women in Manhattan who steal men's salads, look at the name on the top of it, and then message them on Instagram and say, "I'm so sorry that I stole your salad," in a desperate attempt to try and overcome approach anxiety from men to women. There's these videos of girls in maxi dresses with their hair done, just going, "I just want one guy to buy me a drink." Mid-20s, very voluptuous. There's another one of a woman walking through Central Park, big naturals, low top, and she's saying, "Look at me, the skin's flowing, the boobs are out, and not a single guy is going to approach me today." Some people made comparisons between the videos made by women saying they wished men approached them more, who seemed quite eligible and like the sort of women that you would imagine it happens to, with the data breach from the T app. That was not the same cohort when it comes to female mate value. It was much more short hair, piercings, a little bit heavier set. And it was just an interesting world where you have the women that you think this might happen to a lot wanting it more and it not happening. Women who you might think it was a bit more scarce for being a part of a community who warn women off of men and actually are actively disincentivizing this. So it could be kind of this inverse luxury belief thing, which is like Isaiah Berlin's Inner Citadel. If I can't get what I want, I must teach myself to want what I can get. And then bind together, like the female equivalent of sort of inceldom, I suppose.
Well, doing some intersexual competition there, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the problem for the hot woman in Central Park, it's the classic cartoon where the hot guy approaches and she's delighted, and then the ugly guy approaches and she calls HR. I mean, that is the difficulty. Like, you don't want to be approached all day.
I want to be cold approached, but not by
you,
not by him, by you.
Yeah, exactly.
And every guy sees themselves as the not by you guy.
Well,
apart from the ones that are too pushy, because I don't think that guys have a good understanding of their own. I don't think guys have a good understanding of their own mate value. They have a good understanding of their own confidence or their disregard for female rejection, but that is not the same thing as a success rating. Like, I am friends with some of the fucking most eligible men in America that are single, and these guys are. You'd be like, you must actually swim through women in order to get to your front door, and they're just like drenched in self-doubt and uncertainty and this sense of not knowing. And maybe this is a little bit of a luxury challenge. It's a challenge of abundance, not one of scarcity, where they actually need to weave through things in a different sort of way, and there's problems when you get to the higher altitudes as opposed to the lower ones. Men do not have a good understanding of their own mate value. I mean, think.
Yeah, just I'm going to stick my hand up and say, I remember cold approach. Like, I was there. I'm old.
I lived it and survived.
Just about, yeah. I'm old enough to remember when that was actually a thing, and being what the word they use now, chirped, being chatted up. We called it.
Rizzed.
This was, yeah. I remember that being a thing, and it was understood. It starts happening to you when you're about 12, and it was understood by you and your girlfriends compare notes that the kind of guys who do that are probably not the ones who are going to become your boyfriend. That's just, cold approach might have been a thing, and sometimes maybe for those guys...
Because it's evident that you're one of a number.
Those guys would be fun, you might let them buy you a drink and sort of chat to them and let them flirt with you for a bit. But it was understood that those are probably not the guys that are going to become your boyfriend for a whole host of reasons. But they're just
strategy men.
Yeah, you're right.
So
okay, you're going to have to unpack that, Louise, because this is more your wheelhouse than mine.
Surely every modern wisdom listener knows about this. Our case selection, right? So our strategy. This is true in evolutionary biology in general, not just humans. That some species are more are strategists in that they will have lots of sex, lots of babies, except that most of those babies are going to die, live fast, die young kind of strategy. Whereas K selection is like elephants or blue whales. Where
elephants versus rabbits, maybe.
Yeah, so they'll have one baby that they'll really invest in, and and humans are kind of both, depending on context. Like, we're more K strategists, but there are individual variations, and you can kind of nudge in one way or the other. And yeah, I think the guys who come and chirp you in the bar.
This is a big theme in your book, isn't it? There's the guys who there's the chatter-uppers who are probably they're about sowing the seed as widely as possible, and then there's the.
But again, we're trying to find this
material.
We're trying to find this balance, right? It's I think 80% of women say that they want a man to make the first move, but how is that supposed to be done in a manner? And this is how you Labubu yourself, right? In a desperate attempt to try and couch your forthcomingness in a sufficiently cinnamon roll exterior.
But actually, what you need is not to Labubify yourself. It's what you need is the social scaffolding.
Yeah.
Even whether that's sort of
But given that you don't have that, you've got to bootstrap it yourself. Right.
The way that I did this with my husband as a sneaky get round is I heard that he was single, and so I told a friend who was a mutual friend, like, tell him to hit on me, and if he does, I'll say yes. And so we basically did that loop round.
Okay,
that requires social scaffolding.
This is what I mean about the social scaffolding.
Yeah.
There are
you
all
sowed some
kinds.
seeds that this would be a high return strategy.
Yeah.
This horse, the odds might look a little bit like difficult, but it's a sure
you drop
end.
the silk glove,
exactly.
basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, there's an element of that, that women have to be willing to drop the silk glove if they want the man to make the first move. I mean, I'm sure you know the metaphor, and then he can graciously hand it back.
Why are all these eligible men, still not finding wives?
It depends. It's for different reasons. Some of them
need auntieing.
Some of them have got some of them have got themselves to the stage where they've got so much exposure that they are basically they see any interaction as a potential downfall of their career.
Right, and they're worried about gold diggers, presumably.
More so about reputational destruction, like post-MeToo, I didn't consent to that, he is this or that or the other.
Yeah, okay.
Especially if you've got a relatively squeaky clean public image or you're in an industry that is not as forgiving as, say, podcasting. Like, the Andrew Huberman's survival rate should be positive reinforcement for anybody in my side of the internet. But if you're in slightly more...
Was he completely fine after all of that?
Better, I think, actually.
Well, he just posted through it. He was fine.
He just, yeah.
Just
That's
literally,
always the advice, isn't it? Just post through it.
Yeah, just keep looking at sun in the morning and everything is fine. And he lived by that strategy. There's other reasons for it. I think that in the same way as women who are emotionally developed and want to find a partner who is able to hold their own in a conversation and understands their emotions and can be honest and truthful and wants to build a family and do all the rest of this stuff, that's a pretty refined taste for the most part. And a lot of the guys, your lamp analogy around if you haven't yet bought a house, trying to find a lamp that you like and put it in a house is pretty easy. Whereas if you've spent 2 decades building a very, very carefully crafted interior, trying to find the perfect lamp to fit in that is much more difficult.
Yeah.
That's also a challenge. And your ability to discern good from bad lamps, or your standard for lamps, has also increased along with the complexity of the room that you're trying to put it in.
And it's probably complicated further by the fact that people are not lamps. And so people come with their own agency and preferences
and quirks.
And quirks
the answer to the first problem about can I trust this woman not to wreck my reputation is probably, it's to do with long-standing social reputation. You basically need to know her friends who will tell you
if
what
she's a good person
like.
or not.
Yeah, is she trustworthy? Is she crazy? Whatever. But that's not going to work with cold approach at all.
So much of this is, if you're not enmeshed in social fabric where you know their friends and them and maybe their family and they know the same, because it also disincentivizes people from doing fuckery, right? Because
that's right.
The blast radius of that is going to impact
that's
more.
That's the charitable interpretation of what the T-app was trying to do, isn't it? Is to try and
surrogate.
It's trying to compensate for the lack of social architecture.
That's the best Steelman case for the T-app that I've ever heard. That it is a surrogate local community. Yeah. Because everybody is...
Because, I mean, that's how women used to keep, in a sort of village scenario, that's how women used to keep men in line.
Is he trustworthy? Can I...
Yeah. Well,
you heard what he did with such and such.
Exactly. And it's an attempt to provide a tech fix for the absence of that. It's just that because it's only a tech fix, it doesn't work in quite the same way, and in fact, it has all sorts of other horrendous...
Also, there's no repercussions if you make false accusations. If you say, oh, you heard what he did, and someone says, what did you say that I did with such and such?
Whereas in a real world, in a grounded real world, relatively stable community, if you spread false rumors about somebody, eventually you'll get the blowback.
So T-app is an artificial solution to an artificial problem. It's the GLP-1s for...
Yeah, exactly. It's Ozempic for reputation management. Low trust reputation, low trust relationship formation.
Yeah.
65% of men between the ages of 18 and 29 think that guys can have their reputations destroyed for just speaking their mind, and 85% of young men who voted for Trump agree with that statement.
See, one thing, just going back to our sort of leitmotif of the Labubu guy. What I find interesting, as this occurred to me earlier, is that the obviously, not very appealing nature of Labubu guy doesn't seem to have produced a kind of backswing towards this very much more right-wing identified male phenotype.
You know what it is? It's what our friend Catherine D calls the male-to-male transsexual. That's the flip side to the Labubu Man.
What is the male-to-male transsexual?
Guess. What do you think based on the name?
It is a guy basically LARPing as a much more masculine version of himself.
Yep.
Right.
And really devoting his life to that transformation as well.
Which is actually quite a feminine thing to do.
It is. These are the guys who are predominantly interested in lifting so they can post physique, which is just the girliest thing to do. I firmly believe that guys should lift. I don't think they should post physique. I think that's disgusting.
2 days ago, I had some guys that were both over 250 pounds. I would have loved to have seen you say that too. They would have both taken it. They would have both taken it really well. They would have both gone, you know what it is? You're probably right. I do take too many photos of me with my top off.
It's just really girly. Don't do it.
Yeah. I mean,
be strong, be competent. That's really hot. Don't post physique. It's really girly.
I mean, it's an interesting, your point about social media being inherently feminine is so true. And you see this come out of the dissident right kind of, manosphere is the wrong term, but that kind of hyper-masculine dissident right, which, yes, really valorizes masculinity, can be really negative about women, etc., but also includes a lot of selfies, a lot of gossiping on the internet, a lot of like girly bickering.
Never seen purity spirals like it. Oh my word.
Who coined this meme? No, I coined that meme, that kind of thing. I have never seen a girlier bunch of men on the internet. You know, they're wrong about everything.
There are exceptions, you know. Some of my best friends, etc. But well, what you say is on point. And some of this is just produced by the sort of selection effects of the internet.
It's the internet.
You know, that milieu sort of draws a diverse.
Also, the internet kind of optimizes for a very one-dimensional perspective of a person.
Yeah.
So Chris Bumstead, what's that thing that Yasmin was talking about? Looks that can kill, but heart of gold or something? What is it? Okay, oh, right, that's it. Looks that could kill you, comma, could kill you. And looks that could kill you, comma, is a cinnamon roll, right? And Chris Bumstead, guy that was sat here, he's a 6-time Mr. Olympia. He's basically the modern world Arnold Schwarzenegger. 25 million followers on Instagram. Met his now wife because she fell in love with a video of him crying on the internet. So that's looks that could kill you, comma, is a cinnamon roll. And that Chris is one of a very small number of guys who have managed to thread the needle of highly masculine, highly feminine at the same time, or at least highly masculine and embodied, bothered about emotions, reads a lot of books and talks about I don't believe in cry it out for raising our daughter Bradley. We're actually trying, you know, I want to teach her that it's okay to feel and you know, like deep in therapy culture at the same time, whilst being like Adonis is Adonis as a guy, and super strong and big and all the rest of the stuff. I don't think that there is a particularly good place for that. There isn't much room for many people to be able to thread that needle because it takes a long time to explain the nuance of what you are as a guy. Like, you look, and it would be much easier for him to just be brash. Like, if you presented in that way and had the personality of Andrew Tate, it's like, there we go. Like, I've got that cliche. I've already got that archetype locked off. And if you're trying to accumulate attention online, you need to make it quick. You don't want it to be effortful. I think it's just bad for brand. Just do it explains what Nike is trying to get you to believe in as an ethos. It's not just do it and here's a 5,000 word footnote explaining precisely what that means.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. The attention economy dynamic forces everyone to become a very reductive meme version.
It's low
of themselves.
Resolution. Yeah.
And you have to accept that. I mean, I've long since learned that existing in public online means just not feeling obliged to correct like the bizarre versions of you that people have living rent free in their heads. Just like, don't waste your time doing that. No one's got time for that.
The best quote that I've heard around that is, I do not concern myself with the opinions of people who misunderstand me. I think that's so fucking good. Hard to do because you want to correct the misunderstanding. No, you don't see. It's
I remember the saddest version of that I ever saw was when Mary Beard got cancelled for saying something really innocuous. And she posted a video of herself on Twitter crying. And she was obviously trying to get people to understand that, you know, in fact, she contained multitudes.
There's a real person here.
There was a real person here. And but all that did was incur more hate. Because that's just not how the internet works. And you just have to post through it. Like Andrew Huberman. Be more Huberman.
That is a fucking phenomenal hashtag. Be more Huberman, less Labubu. So what about the other side of this? I'm interested. I read this article on Substack, which both of you probably will have read, about Schlub feminism. The MeToo was the death of Schlub feminism.
No.
Okay, so this was that the thesis is MeToo protected women who were maybe a little more neurotic than is optimal and got much more attention from men than they would like. And what that meant was women who actually would have liked a bit more attention from men and were quite keen to try and find a partner were immediately told, oh, my sweet summer child, you're not doing that because you want the attention of men. This is for yourself. You're wearing the makeup, you're doing the beautification, you're doing all the rest of the things because this is part of your empowerment. And it didn't allow any room for the schlub female, the Bridget Jones, the like hopeless romantic, immediately became derogated because you are doing something for men, put power in men, and also inevitably meant that, well, you're encouraging some of that, you're making yourself not subservient, but kind of at the mercy. It's like basically Me Too killed the Bridget Jones archetype in women, and there's no place for that.
Do you remember the essay "Stacey is Depressed"? It was on
I remember reading that. Yeah, what was that?
A similar theme, really. That there are lots of just quite ordinary-looking people of both sexes, really, who'd be very happy to find an ordinary-looking person of the opposite sex to love, and they're probably both a bit schlubby, and so what? And that somehow this hyper-competitive online dynamic of, Chads and Stacys and so on has just made it increasingly difficult. Like, the guys are relegated to sort of neckbeard computer gaming basement dwellerdom, and Stacey, meanwhile, is just she's either a sort of disposable plaything for some Chad, having been kind of psyoped into all of that by various kind of terrible internet discourses, or else she's just terminally single as well, and also desperate for love. And Stacey is just miserable as a consequence. That feels sort of cognate with your.
Have we killed Bridget Jones?
Have we killed
that archetype?
Sometimes there is just this great mystery about why some people are single. I was talking to someone yesterday who does a lot of she organises Christian mingling things to try and get Christians to meet in real life, and she said that they always have an oversupply of women. And it's a classic thing in churches to have loads of really earnest, often lovely, really eligible, attractive, etc. women showing up desperate for a husband, and they can't find them. And I mean, it's always, I think often you can't really tell without really, really knowing someone exactly what's going on there. Because whenever you hear doom and gloom about people are finding it impossible to find partners now, etc., I think of all the people I know who are Stacey-esque in... So is it Stacey's depressed?
Stacey, yeah.
In that they're completely normal people and they have happy, flourishing family lives.
Does that make you more skeptical around the perennially single, and you think, maybe everything's not as rosy on the outside as it might seem?
It makes me assume something is going on.
Yeah, I had a vigorous debate with a friend the other day who was like, it was a kind of a throwaway joke. He was like, oh, maybe we should just send all of the incels to Ukraine where there's a massive shortage of men. And I was like, whoa. What makes you think that Ukrainian women want anything to do with those guys?
Oh, what? Sorry, to fight and die, or to get married to Ukrainian women?
No, to make up the shortage
sex ratio.
Yeah, to compensate the sex ratio.
Right.
And I was like, whoa,
yeah,
there might be. But we're talking about actual people here, and sometimes these things can be complicated.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something terribly wrong with people who are single. Like I say comfortingly, right? It doesn't mean that. It's just that there's probably something going on that might be hard to see, like excessive pickiness or getting up to the moment of committing and backing off every time or something like that. There's probably something kind of
committed
invisible.
to a professional career that actually there's just no bandwidth.
Because actually, if you look around at the people you actually know in real life, not on the internet, there isn't a correlation really between how attractive you are and how likely you are to be married.
No.
There isn't.
I did have this idea that maybe the birth rate and coupling is associated with obesity, but not because of some hormonal thing, but just that there is a minimum bar that humans will find other humans attractive at. And if you fall below it by eating yourself out of that window, everyone's just less hot. And now there's less desire across the board. People tend to mate in terms of physical mate value and overall mate value broadly assortatively, right? They're within their range. Maybe you can eat yourself below that.
It also plausibly becomes a hormonal thing in that weight gain corresponds to higher levels of estrogen.
I agree. I don't think you even need that dynamic. I think it's just that if we assume that a well put together body is something that people will find sexually attractive, and as you get further and further away from that, actually on either side, but typically at the moment we've got
just less ogling going on generally.
Yeah, you just think you're less ogle-worthy. Like
Donald Winnicott's idea of the good enough mother.
I'm not familiar with that.
So he said that, Mary will probably know this better than me, but he was a child psychotherapist.
Yeah, he was who
argued that you don't need mothers to be perfect by any means. Like in order for children to be properly attached and develop happily, you just need the good enough mother, the mother who meets the standard in terms of providing care for her baby. And yeah, maybe it's the good enough partner.
Body.
Yeah, they just hit that standard. Although I saw some anonymous man recently comment, which I thought was insightful, that women of the last... I mean, Ozempic is going to reverse this, by the way. We've surely hit peak obesity already. But women
not
having
if they keep putting
decades,
the prices up, presumably.
Well, then it becomes even more desirable, right? As time...
I don't think weight is ever going to stop being a status signal in an obesogenic culture. If Ozempic looks like it might fix that, they'll just put up the price of Ozempic. And it just kicks the can down the road. I mean, it's already happened. Eli Lilly just tripled the price, didn't they, in the UK? So immediately, thinness will remain a status signal in an obesogenic culture. The cost stops being one of self-discipline and becomes literally just a cost.
Well, it's a different sort of signal then, though.
Yeah, it's a signal of what you. That's true. The meaning of the signal changes.
Yeah, massively.
But the class, its class inflected nature does.
True, but I don't know whether class is associated with, or previously was associated with weight.
Yes, absolutely. Weight, obesity is strongly correlated with poverty on both sides of the pond.
Okay, and it may still be that, but for different reasons.
Yes, just the reasons for that might change.
You can't afford this solution as opposed to
you can't afford the tech
fix. You can't afford the healthy alternative.
Rather than exactly, you can't afford to shop at Whole Foods. You're too busy working 3 low-paid jobs to go to the gym or whatever. It becomes you can't afford the jab.
Well, pre-Ozempic and still probably now, I think women have simultaneously become fatter and prettier because there's a lot more money in interventions.
Are those two separate dynamics?
Well, in the face, right? Because and also things like hair and whatever. There's so much more sophisticated beauty tech available, and using things like whatever retinols or getting your eyebrows microbladed or stuff. That stuff has become very routine and very accessible. And social media is full of like hacks on how to do all this expensive salon treatment on yourself. So I really think that the bar has moved a lot in terms of what women do to their faces and their hair.
It has,
even if they've also got fatter.
But maybe the technology for making men more attractive hasn't kept up in kind.
Men don't really try as well,
right?
And also, what makes men attractive isn't really, it's only secondarily or even tertiary. Appearance is secondary or tertiary.
Okay, but when we're talking...
Fake tan is not going to make much difference to me.
But going to the gym, perhaps...
Being physically competent remains the gold standard for being attractive.
And earning,
which
goes,
a breadwinner's
wage.
It goes with having a reasonable physique. But I don't know, this is a hill I will die on, scaffolder physique. Wins over gym physique any day of the week.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that you saw, was it Ollie Murs who did that transformation and William Costello tweeted about it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And then Sacha Baron Cohen did the same thing. Do you see he was on the front cover of Men's Fitness?
I didn't see that.
I thought Ollie Murs looked better shredded.
Well, but you would be in the minority. Even if you
Apparently
do think that, you would be in the minority.
Yeah.
And I had an idea around this, which was...
He posted physique, though. It was posting physique. Instant turn-off, sorry. On that basis alone, objectively, like he looked good in the second picture, but he was posting physique. Ugh.
Okay, but what if it had been a candid physique photo?
What if it was
that would have been a completely different ballgame.
Right,
totally different ballgame. Hard to say at that point, but it wasn't.
So there was basically Sacha Baron Cohen did the same thing. I think he's in a superhero movie. He is the lead actor in some superhero movie, and he also got divorced at the same time. So it was breakup physique, superhero physique, and then you compare him with Borat.
So when guys get shredded, is that the equivalent of getting a new haircut?
Yeah, it's the pixie cut, but for dudes. Yeah, exactly. Going on a heavy course of testosterone is going and saying to your hairdresser, we're going to do it today. We're finally going to get it off.
I'm going to get the pixie cut.
Yeah. So there was definitely an interesting question, I think, that Ollie Murs is fat in one photo, shredded in another photo.
He wasn't fat, though. He just looked normal.
Relatively fat. He was maybe, I would guess, 15 to 18% body fat for the bro lifters in the audience. And then he probably got himself down towards single figures. He wasn't like striated delts, but he was visible six-pack abs, that's not nothing. Like that's fucking... And it was not in an unbelievably... long amount of time either. So, he'd speed ran it, which is, it's impressive. However, lots of women said this isn't attractive, and lots of men said you don't know what you find attractive. What I think is happening there is that guys they place so much pride and weight on, if I can get jacked, women will find me attractive. That is a big poltergeist to kill. And if you do, you go, oh, fuck. Maybe I don't have as much control over my mate value by going to the gym as I thought.
Yeah.
Fuck, the illusion has been smashed.
This was my one recourse to,
I sort of feel like gym body is not a meaningless signal in the sense that it points to a measure of self-discipline.
Yeah, serious
consistent,
to have achieved that
consistent self-discipline and individual willpower and so on, which is, that's a good signal. But it's not the only one. And if you're also a massive weirdo, it's not going to cancel that out.
to be a little bit cynical about the women who said that they don't like the shredded physique, I think that like most women in the West are like a bit fat, right? I mean, the average American woman is like a size 18 or even 20 in American sizing. No, that's not right. It goes the other direction.
That can't be right.
It's a 16 in the UK, so was a 12 in the US. But basically, the average American woman is like overweight. I don't think that she wants a shredded spouse because he shows her up.
There was a story I heard from a friend who was a powerlifter. Powerlifters go through big weight fluctuations. They're the fat boy lifters, typically, squat, bench, deadlift. And he then went and did a bodybuilding show, and then he went and did weightlifting. So he went through all of the different strength sports. And his girlfriend said to him, I felt my most comfortable when you were powerlifting, which is when you were fattest. I felt my most insecure when you were when you were bodybuilding, which is when you were leanest.
Yeah.
There's certainly an argument to be made from like an EP standpoint, which is if a man is spending lots of effort on his own physique, that suggests that he is kind of advertising his beauty to other people, which the whole dad bod thing is actually true. If you've got one extra spare calorie to spend, should you be spending it on yourself in terms of self-beautification and enhancement, or should you be spending it on your family? And if you are getting more attention from the women around you, who are you doing this for? Well, maybe you're not quite as committed to the family as we thought you were. Where are those extra calories going? They're going on yourself. You're eating the chicken. You're going to the gym. That doesn't seem like the sort of thing that a committed father's doing. Have we not transcended this? Have you not got past this? Who are you actually doing it for? But in the interesting female beautification, maybe, but it's at least a couple more second, third orders away. Men don't look at women, wives that are beautifying themselves, unless it's very provocative and overt in terms of the way that they present, as you are doing that in order to advertise your eligibility to potential monkey branch lily pad backup mates.
I feel like another factor in that is that, I mean, you know, feminists are fond of denouncing the male gaze, but there is unmistakably a difference in how men look at and evaluate other people's physiques. Actually, I think of both sexes and how women do. And there's a sense, you know, if you're a woman, you beautify yourself. You might moan about the male gaze, but also I think you'd probably miss it. And like, you know, when women, a lot of women, when they reach middle age, do miss it genuinely. And, you know, there's a sense in which being checked out is part of what helps to form your sense of who you are, you know, rightly or wrongly, but that's part of the sort of ongoing, constant kind of ambient intersexual dynamics. But men, like a man who's titivating himself is implicitly doing it for the male gaze, because women don't look at each other like that. This goes to what you were saying about.
I don't think that men know that.
They might not realize it, but the point is that from a woman's perspective, when a guy is titivating themselves, you know, implicitly it's for the male gaze, and that's just a turn off, because that's like, you're like, dude, you're in my.
It's either
territory.
Gay or ignorant of female preferences.
Yeah, and or possibly, you know, it's somewhere in that male to male transsexual territory.
Does it have to be gay? Can it not just be signalling to other men that
it's
have
sort
grit
of,
and conscientiousness?
I mean, it can be homophilic, without necessarily being like actively kind of sexually homosexual.
But it's orientated towards other men.
But it's bro stuff
in
a way which implicitly excludes the woman. It excludes women from the dialogue.
Well, there's also a big failure of cross-sex mind reading, because guys are going, I find that intimidating. You must find it attractive. And some things that are intimidating are attractive, and women don't know it. And then there's some things that men find intimidating, which maybe women don't find attractive.
Women make the same mistakes. Like with choosing clothes, I will often run past if I'm like doing something publicly, I'll run past my outfit past my husband, not because he knows anything about fashion, precisely because he doesn't know anything about fashion, and sometimes because it's hard to tell the difference between, do I like this because it's signalling status to other women and it's signalling that I'm very abreast of current fashions and I'm experimental in my choices and whatever, or do I like this because it actually like looks good? And men are often actively turned off the high fashion, impressing other women type of clothes.
Have you seen that video of the girl showing off her new boyfriend fit jeans to her boyfriend? So it's an American woman, and the boyfriend is in the kitchen washing up or doing something. He says, honey, I just got these new jeans. And they're the sort of super loose fit, loose at the knee, loose at the ankle. What do you think? And he daydreams away to 10 years in the past when fitted jeans that you could see a girl's thighs and a girl's ass existed. And he sort of like shakes, swallows, he goes, oh, they're lovely. And then she gets an even more baggy pair of jeans and he's on the floor sort of crying and holding himself.
Yeah.
And there is certainly this weird lack of understanding in both ways about what it is that's... And then I guess at least with guys, very few guys are dressing themselves to signal to other men. Almost all guys are doing fashion exclusively for women, but women are doing fashion for men and for women. So they need to... I mean, I do not know the difference between a Birkin bag, even though I know the name, I don't actually know anything else about them other than they're expensive and called Birkin. I guess if it said it on it, I'd know what it was. And something that's from Peacocks, right, and £10. I literally have no idea. So who is that for? It's for other women, right? It's the, I guess, red bottom Louboutins. I know that just because it's a meme. But beyond that, I don't know the shoes. I don't know. So this signal is... Look at all of the luxury time that I have. Look at all of the spare capacity I have. If I'm in a relationship with a partner, look at how invested he is in me. You better not try and take my man. Look at he's fucking 30 bags deep on this bag, on this literal bag. You're not taking him from me because he owes me.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before we got started this trend of feminism and women turning to the right. What is that dynamic that we're seeing that's going on?
So it's quite a common view on the dissident right that women are innately left-wing. So there are average psychological differences between men and women, which we've all talked about at length. Women tend to be more agreeable than men, more neurotic than men, more... sensitive to social signals than men are. There are various differences. Obviously, they vary between individuals, but they scale to being quite significant differences between the sexes. And one thing that does seem to be clear is that women tend to be more egalitarian in their own social groups, or at least in their female friendships.
Overtly.
More overtly egalitarian, yeah. And sometimes this gets interpreted as that means that women are left-wing, and like innately. And if you let women vote and participate in public life, they will drag everything to the left. I tend to think that's not true because there are so many examples of historically of women being very enthusiastic participants in right-coded political movements. I'm obviously talking left and right is a bit complicated in the past, but say women participating enthusiastically in temperance and prohibition would be one example. The church ladies phenomenon, where women are actually the ones enforcing conservative social norms locally, or even female participation in Nazism. I mean, it's probably not quite right actually to say that Nazism is right-wing. It's complicated, but women were passionate participants in the rise of Hitler, and in fact often had like weird sexual obsessions with Hitler, which you can read about at length, and had a kind of Beatlemania when he showed up and things like that. So the idea that women are always and forever like woke, I think is nuts. It clearly is the case, though, that at the moment, young women in particular skew woke a lot, and particularly in some countries skew woke a lot, and there's a big sex gap. I think it's more that there are some political movements which kind of tap into feminine preferences, and woke is one of them. It has that... It's not so much the egalitarianism as the encouragement to scoop up and protect childlike figures. So whether that be trans people or refugees or whatever, encouraging women to channel those maternal energies towards certain groups. I think it's very powerful. Yeah.
There's also infinite opportunities for moral dogpiling.
Yeah,
which is just incredibly appealing.
Yeah.
If you're how so?
I mean, you can, if you can arbitrarily change which words are forbidden sort of every few months, and then mobilize your friends to attack somebody for getting it wrong, and you can use that as a means of conducting office politics. That's
attacking people for moral infractions.
Yeah, attacking people for moral infractions. You know, in a sense, it's kind of village. It's like women's village modus operandi on steroids on the internet, and divorced from any meaningful application in real life or any sort of meaningful kind of breaking mechanisms.
I also think wokeness is quite emotionally compelling in the sense of feeling like you have this sense of purpose and crusade, and I think that young women in particular find that quite enticing. Wokeness doesn't really work on men though, apart from the Labubu Man. But it doesn't hit those. I think I like to think of it like Jonathan Haidt's idea of moral flavors. Like, it doesn't hit the flavors that men have taste receptors for.
I'm gonna say this carefully, because otherwise I will get dogpiled by exactly these guys. But I do think it's correct, even though this is I do actually think it's right that there's a subset of the E-right which is the equivalent of woke, just predominantly for men. And by that, I don't mean the woke right in the sort of James Lindsay sense of, being some sort of terrible thing that must be expelled from polite discourse because something civil liberties or free speech or civil discourse and objectivity and all of that. What I actually think is going on is that the sort of woke pattern of social interaction and the E-right pattern of social interaction are both updated versions, very, very strongly gender-coded, of two political sides as mediated through the kind of interactions which are just normal on the internet, which are very much less rationalistic in both cases, actually just visibly the case, very much more unmoored from material realities, unmoored from localized communities, very abstracted, happening in the internet, full of all kinds of perverse financial incentives and geared mostly towards rage baiting on both sides than really towards substantive politics or even really getting anything done in the real world at all. They're extremely online. And actually, I found it very interesting watching the emergence of Zoran Mamdani in this context in New York.
Bad bench press.
Yeah, I mean, because he strikes me as he's a sort of post-literate leftist. I don't mean he himself is post-literate, but he mobilizes a certain kind of very net native leftism. And that's the source of his popularity. Whether or not he'll ever actually get elected and or deliver any policies is almost secondary to that. And there's a subset of Trumpism and MAGA, which is that but for the right. And those two movements they are respectively gendered. There are more women that embrace the Mamdanism and there are more men who embrace MAGAism. And yes, of course, there's some overlap, but they're both strongly gendered.
Are we seeing a trajectory pivot then at the moment? Is there some subversive?
Right.
Yeah.
Are women turning to the right?
I think that when they do, they'll turn quickly. That's my main take.
I'm actually going to quote a noted member of the E-right in support of that. Bronze Age pervert who said memorably, "You remember also the mob is a woman," which I think is an important.
What's that mean?
By that, I mean I'm interpreting here, but the way I understand that is that the mob, as in a group of people highly, morally aerated, angry, sort of mimetically charged, wanting action now, is actually, is as plausibly all female as it is all male. An angry mob can be of either sex, but the mob as a collective entity, Bronze Age pervert in this context is suggesting is actually a female phenomenon.
Although of course, if the mob's going to cut off your head, it'll have to involve some men.
Yeah, I mean,
but the emotional energy,
the emotional energy is mimetic. It's contagious. It's collective.
So a concrete example of this would be what we've already talked about, refugees or, immigration in general. And until now, the very strong energy from young women in particular has been to see ethnic minorities and refugees in particular as childlike figures in need of protection, and also to have this slightly... to see this cause as very emotional, kind of, you get pulled along with the mimetic energy kind of thing. You could easily see that flip, and actually it becomes, and you're already seeing this among working class women in Britain, definitely, is that the childlike entity in need of protection is like literal children. Like
I think one of the really underappreciated scissors here is actually whether or not you have kids.
Yeah,
and I would bet any sum of money you care to name that you'll find more women on the refugees welcome side who don't have kids, and more women on the
surrogate family.
No, very straightforwardly for the reason Louise just explained. That if you're worried about your kids, that's an entirely different and very much smaller and more particularistic set of affections than if you love quote unquote the vulnerable in the abstract.
The inverse of this, I think, is a big part of the reason why so many guys want to be entrepreneurs right now, is displaced paternal instinct, that they've got this project that they're working toward, they've got a purpose, a meaning, they've got a single thrust and drive. My team, my staff, my purpose, whatever this thing is.
That's interesting.
Is just supplanted family.
Yeah. But you could easily see, and I think we're already starting to see, a right-wing political movement propelled by women that is using exactly those political flavours that women are receptive to, like fear, women being more neurotic, so fear of threat, wanting to mother childlike or actual children figures, and the kind of mimetic energy. There's no reason that has to be left-wing.
Where are we seeing that?
Well, I think we're probably seeing it with the women showing up outside migrant hotels.
The pink protests.
Yeah.
That's what they're called.
Yeah, they're not. They wear pink.
Right.
They literally wear pink.
Which is an interesting echo of the Trump era pussy hat thing.
Yeah.
They're not wearing pink pussy hats. They're wearing pink T-shirts and they're turning up saying close the hotels and send them home.
Yeah, and they're all over social media. And at the moment, this is very much contained to being a working class thing, and middle class women are quite hostile to it mostly. But I think you could easily see that spread easily. And yeah, women turning to the right could become. Posey Parker is an example of this already happening. In that she's able to. Her movement is distinctively feminine, and also not left wing,
not the very least.
Yeah.
Louise and Mary, you're both great. I really, really appreciate you. Where should people go to keep up to date with all of the things you're saying and writing? And
so my podcast is Maiden Mother Matriarch, all the places that you find podcasts. My first book was The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. I am writing a second book on birth rates, but having children has kind of got in the way of writing it. But I will finish it eventually.
Put your money where your mouth is. Put your fertility where your book is.
I know. Well, it wouldn't quite have as much credibility, would it, if I wasn't walking the walk?
I have a Substack, maryharrington.co.uk is where you'll find it. My regular column is at Unheard. I tweet, although not so much over the summer at Moving Circles. I post these days.
School year started. Everyone can go and follow you, and you'll be back up to speed. And you've got a book.
And my last book was Feminism Against Progress. I'm writing another one. This one is on politics after literacy. So internet politics after the singularity, if you like. We've already merged with our machines. What happens next?
Heck yeah. Aunties, I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning in. That episode felt like a warm, cozy hug by the fireside and a cup of cocoa. And here's a still very interesting but slightly less warm conversation between Louise and Bonnie Blue. I'll let you make your own conclusions about that.